Chapter 501 Target Police Station. Naruto, you mean, you like me the way I was before? Yako said suddenly. Naruto shook his head slightly. No matter what kind of senior you are, I appreciate it very much. It's just that I feel a little uncomfortable seeing your appearance just now. Yako was stunned for a while, but she woke up immediately, and saw the apologetic smile on Naruto's face. I'm so sorry Naruto, for letting you see me being weak. I'll never do this again in the future. Naruto nodded slightly and opened his mouth to say something, but he didn't say anything after all. The car continued to move forward. Because Naruto and Yazi opened the way for the car on the roof, under the intense firepower, their bodies retreated one after another. Finally, the car finally drove out of the community and came to the suburban road leading to other urban areas. Here, there are not many dead bodies. Originally, Naruto and the others wanted to change a car, but since these two off-road vehicles perform very well, and after the modification, it is also very good to have Naruto and Yazi standing on the roof, which can be used as firepower output, so there is no more change cars. Before driving out of Shinbud City, everyone went to the gas station to fill up the car, and also prepared a bucket in the trunk for backup. In this way, you don't have to worry about transportation for the time being, but the food you brought out has almost been eaten, and now you have to find something to eat. So Naruto decided to find some food on the way to the nearest Miyamoto Rei's house. The car was driving on the suburban road around Shinbud City, heading towards Lee's house. Miyamoto Rei's father is a policeman, and her mother is also a traffic policeman. After the disaster broke out, she just had a phone call with her father, and then there was no audio. She couldn't get in touch with her mother, and now the radio was interrupted. And in the case of widespread power outages, it is even more difficult to reach them. Therefore, Lee was still very worried about the situation of her parents. This time Naruto chose to go to her home to check the situation first, and she couldn't help but be very grateful. Finally, the car entered the urban area of Shinbud City, and the target was the police station in front. Lee's father is a senior officer of the police station here. It shouldn't be so easy for things to happen. With a glimmer of hope, the car arrived at the police station smoothly. As soon as it stopped, Lee jumped out of the car impatiently, planning to rush into the police station. You guys stay here first, and I'll accompany her in to see what's going on. Naruto stretched out his hand and pressed a Hiraishin mark on the car, and said to Yazi and the others in the car. Because the surroundings are full of dangers, and there are constantly dead bodies approaching here, it is much easier to keep the children in the car and let them hold it than to rush into the police station. After all, there will be more encounters in the police station. Danger. The more people there are, the more difficult it is to act. After all, the purpose of coming here is to confirm whether Lee's father was killed. Seeing that Lee had rushed into the police station alone, Naruto also understood her anxious mood at the moment. With a flash of her figure, a teleportation technique appeared beside her, lightly pressed her shoulder, and whispered. Don't worry, just follow me, don't get excited. Lee Wenyan was slightly startled, looked at him and nodded slightly. Naruto smiled lightly, pushed open the door of the police station, and walked inside. At this time, the power inside the police station had also been cut off. Fortunately, it was still daytime, and the light was abundant. Naruto walked in front of Lee and observed the surrounding situation from time to time, as if he was strolling in the courtyard. Because Lee had been to the police station several times, she still knew the location of her own father's office. Following Lee's direction, Naruto walked over with her. The entire police station was dead silent, and there was no human being alive. Lee couldn't help but feel a little nervous, and her breathing became slightly faster. The more there was no one, the more flustered she became. Suddenly, a figure appeared in front of him. It was a short and fat person. Lee was slightly startled and looked up in a hurry, only to see that the other person's face was gray and his eyes were white, as if he was a dead body. And half of the shoulders of the other party have been bitten off, revealing the white bones inside. The flesh and blood are connected to the bones, and the other side is the intact arm, with a police pistol hanging on his hand. His body is slowly moving towards this side travel. Ah! Lee, who saw the other side clearly, couldn't help but let out a soft cry. He is my dad's colleague. Her tone was even more worried and anxious. Dad's colleague has become a dead body. What about Dad? How is he? She didn't dare to think deeply. At this time, the dead body had already heard Lee's voice, and suddenly slammed towards this side. Lee hurriedly clenched the rifle in her hand, and stabbed the opponent fiercely. Kai! The army thorn at the front of the rifle stabbed the opponent's body fiercely, but because the opponent's body was fat, he couldn't hurt his vitals for a while. Just when Lee was about to withdraw the rifle, the dead body had already rushed towards Lee like a madman. Past. Compared with strength, Lee is not its opponent at all. Seeing that Lee Luo was at a disadvantage, Naruto had no choice but to take action, stretched out his finger and flicked it lightly, and a small wind blade suddenly shot out from the fingertip, directly piercing the opponent's skull. Boom! The body fell heavily. Li Wei was slightly relieved, and withdrew the army thorn. Naruto stepped forward and picked up the pistol from the dead body's hand and handed it to Rei. Keep this gun away and put it on your body as an extra guarantee. Li was stunned for a moment, and immediately took the gun and put it on her body. Thank you. She nodded slightly. Naruto smiled slightly. The two moved forward again, and when they reached the second floor, Lee saw the dead bodies that kept falling down next to them. Most of these people were police officers, and there were also some cleaning staff. It seemed that these people were shot after they became dead bodies. Killing, it proves that some battles took place here. Here, here, Lee shouted suddenly, pointing to an office ahead. Naruto grabbed her, who was about to rush over immediately, and whispered, Don't worry, I'll go first. Lee nodded. Naruto took the lead, pushed open the door and walked in. The office was empty, although it looked a little messy, but fortunately there were no corpses. It seems that there should be no battles here. After confirming that the place was safe, Lee couldn't help rushing over to her father's desk to rummage. Chapter 502 Survivor. She pulled out a note, and seeing the message on it belonged to her father, Lee finally let out a long sigh of relief. Her father was not killed. In the message, he mentioned his retreat plan and asked Lee and the others to come to their retreat location to join the survivors. After reading the message, Lee felt relieved. Since her father was fine, she went to find her mother. She put away the message, and after General Naruto said it, the two left the office. Along the way, Lee was contemplating. After reading her father's message, she actually had the urge to meet her father and them very much, but when she wanted to make this decision, she was reluctant to let everyone know. Naruto looked at her back, thoughtfully. Just as the two of them were going down the stairs, a dead body suddenly jumped out from the side, and Zhang Qiba lunged towards Li Fei with claws. At this time, Li was thinking about the problem and didn't notice the abnormal danger at all. When the sound of movement woke her up, the dead body had already rushed in front of her, only 1 meter away from her. She even saw the large row of Kiba's teeth on the dead body, and the deadness that was blowing in her face. At this moment, she couldn't help being stunned. Because her body couldn't keep up with the reaction at all and couldn't escape. But at this moment, Naruto behind him had already sensed the danger, and just when the dead body was about to pounce on Rei, Naruto's figure flashed and came to Lee's place at a speed that was several times happier than the dead body. Beside him, he stretched his arms around her slender waist, hugged her into his arms, and kicked the dead body's chest. Boom! With a muffled sound, the dead body was kicked out instantly. In midair, Naruto stretched out his hand, and a small wind blade flew out, piercing his brain. The dead body fell to the ground, and Lee then realized that her entire body was in Naruto's arms, leaning tightly against his chest, smelling the hot man's breath on his face. Yuhi's heart was full of love. Suddenly thumping. The next moment, she hurriedly pushed Naruto away, and Yuhi thanked her with a look on her face. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto smiled lightly, indicating nothing. Be careful in the future, don't be careless, he said. Miyamoto Rei nodded, and she felt a little strange in her heart. Although she was very happy when she received the message from her father, she did not lose her vigilance because of this, and was actually approached by a dead body. This has never happened before. Could it be that because Naruto was by his side, he subconsciously felt a very safe feeling? She couldn't help but feel a little confused. When the two left the police station and came to the side of the off-road vehicle, there were many dead bodies on the road around the car, but under the firepower of Yazi and the others, these dead bodies could not get close to here for a while. When the two of them came out, there was a hint of joy on Yazi's face. Naruto, is everything done? Yako asked from a distance. Naruto made an okay gesture over there and said, drive. Shizuka took the lead, and as soon as she stepped on the accelerator, the car drove straight ahead, while Naruto reached out and wrapped her arms around Rei's slender waist. Horaishin, S-Art activated. Swish. A golden light flashed on the spot, and the next moment Naruto and the two appeared beside the Yakuza on the roof of the car. Yazi turned around for a moment and couldn't help but exclaim, is this the legendary teleportation? Naruto smiled slightly, and Lee was still immersed in the special feeling brought by the flash of the moment just now. She was still staring blankly at the door of the police station, where the two of them had just stayed. Under the fierce firepower, the dead bodies could not come to the car here at all, and the off-road vehicle drove out of the encirclement. The next goal is to find Miyamoto Rei's mother, Miyamoto Kiriko. As a traffic policeman, Rei believes that she will never be killed so easily. When I came to the vicinity of Miyamoto Rei's house, the car stopped. There happened to be a small shop in front of it. Several people got out of the car one after another, planning to find some food. A group of people rushed into the canteen and found that no one was there. It seemed that they had all turned into dead bodies and walked away, or were eaten by dead bodies. At least it was safe here. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and began to pick up the food in the canteen. Alice slightly hesitated and said to Naruto, Big brother Naruto, don't we have to pay for these things now? Naruto couldn't help laughing when he heard it. There is no one now, so of course there is no need to pay. But, that's not right. Alice argued with Jiku in her arms. Naruto shook his head and laughed, feeling helpless for her child's naive thoughts, reached out and rubbed her short pink hair, and said with a smile, no one cares about these things now. Our purpose is to survive, only do you know that? After listening to Alice, she thought for a while, and finally nodded, well. I understand Naruto big brother. Then I'll help too. After she finished speaking, she ran to the shelf to pick up all kinds of food, and take it very hard. Naruto couldn't help but smile. Just as everyone was quickly picking out food, a figure suddenly walked in at the door and stood in front of Naruto. Naruto looked up, but saw a woman who looked exactly like Miyamoto Rei standing at the entrance of the canteen, wearing a gray casual jacket and tight trousers, with orange hair and Rei's hair. It was exactly the same, except that she had short hair, and she was standing on the ground with a three-pronged spear in her hand, looking at Naruto and everyone in surprise. Who are you? Naruto was also slightly startled. Of course he wouldn't be such a beautiful woman who was dead, but because of this, he was surprised. He didn't expect that there were still people who survived here. In front of her chest are two bigger meat mountains than Lee. Below the meat mountains is a slender waist, and then under the outline of the tight trousers, there are two slender and plump thighs. She has one hand on her waist, holding a long spear in one hand, looks heroic, and has a mature, seductive and human charm. Rei. Suddenly, before she could answer Naruto's words, she suddenly exclaimed and rushed towards Miyamoto Rei, who was shopping inside. Everyone was shocked by this sudden appearance of the woman. Then, seeing Lee turn around suddenly, looking at the woman who ran towards her with a face of surprise, she also suddenly opened her arms and rushed towards the woman. Chapter 503 Kiriko. She is Lee's mother, Miyamoto Koriko. As a traffic policeman, she used to be a drag racing party before marriage, and she is also a very sturdy woman. After marriage, she has restrained a lot, but after the crisis broke out, for the first time, I picked up the long spear that Lee's father used to practice at home, and fought against the dead. Lee didn't expect to see her mother so soon. She couldn't help but be full of joy and hugged her mother tightly. Although the crisis broke out only a few days ago, the two seemed to be like long-lost relatives. After a long time, they separated, and their faces were full of joy after reunion. Seeing the appearance of the two, Yan Yi, Shiji and others couldn't help but be very envious. Lee had already reunited with her family, but their relatives were still unknown. After a while, Bui Riko looked at the people around her, but found that none of them knew her, so she couldn't help asking, Lee, didn't Yuan Shao with you when you escaped? Hearing this, Lee couldn't help but look gloomy and sighed. I came out with him, but it didn't take long for him to. Bui Riko was stunned for a moment, and then she understood in her heart, with a sad look on her face, Lee, it's really hard for you. Miyamoto Rei took her mother's hand, raised her head and said, Mom, fortunately I met Naruto and the others in the same academy on the way. They saved me and allowed me to live until now. Hearing this, Kiriko nodded, let go of her daughter's hand, and then came to Naruto's side, looked up at Naruto at the head, a glimmer of admiration flashed in her eyes, and said, Naruto classmate, thank you for saving me. My daughter. As she said that, she bowed deeply to Naruto and the others, and was about to bow to thank them. Naruto hurriedly stretched out his hand to support Kiriko's arm, smiled and said, Auntie, don't be too polite, we are all companions together, so don't show off like this. Besides, Rei's spear skills are also very good, she is one of us. A stalwart. Lee, who was on the side, was a little embarrassed by Naruto's praise. She couldn't help but rolled her eyes at her and said angrily, no way. Naruto, don't talk nonsense. It's obvious that you save me every time. Naruto touched his nose and smiled. Kiriko glanced at her daughter and then at Naruto, with a strange smile on her face. Oh, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Miyamoto Kiriko, Lee's mother, you can just call me Aunt Kiriko. Kiriko said suddenly. Everyone nodded, and then stepped forward to give a brief self-introduction to Kiriko. After everyone got acquainted a little, Naruto ordered everyone to bring the food into the car, after which he turned to look at Kiriko and asked, Auntie Kiriko, we have to go to other places now, what do you plan to do? What's next? Why don't you come with us? Kiriko frowned slightly, her mature pretty face flashed a hint of hesitation. She glanced at Lee and said, I originally wanted to take Lee to the elementary school to stay with the other survivors, but now. Quote. Mom, I want to be with Naruto and the others now, won't you come with me? Lee was taken aback when she heard her mother's words, and she couldn't help but exclaimed, No, mother, how can you leave us alone? Come with us, and with everyone, we will surely find hope. Seeing her daughter's earnest look, Kiriko had no choice but to give up the idea of going to the elementary school for evacuation. She nodded, okay, then I'll be with you. Seeing how you are in Lily for Naruto's sake, let's find a new world together. Yeah, Lee nodded heavily, and a reassuring smile finally appeared on her face. However, because of the addition of Kiriko, there are more and more people, and an off-road vehicle is simply not enough. When Kiriko saw so many people crowding into the same car, she couldn't help laughing. Everyone, come with me, I have a big car here. Mom, did you find another car? Lee Weiwei was overjoyed. Naruto and the others all looked at her in unison. Bui Riko smiled slightly, led everyone to the yard of a nearby building, and said, Look, there happens to be a private RV here. This family wanted to leave here in a RV before he died, but he didn't expect it. They got infected the first time, and then I found this car when I was walking around here and it looked like a perfect fit for us. Quote. Shizuka couldn't help but walked over and got into the car. There was a lot of space in the RV, and there were all kinds of equipment and tools. It was like an ordinary family room. Instead, it feels like being at home. There are stools, sofas, tables, and cabinets. There are almost many facilities, and even a TV and DVD player, although these things are completely useless now. As soon as Shizuka got in the car, she found that there was still a key on it, and after opening it, she started the car directly. "This car is not bad, Naruto," Shizuka exclaimed in surprise. "All performances are good, and the fuel volume is sufficient. Let's bring the food and gasoline from the off-road vehicle." The girls couldn't help cheering, and hurried out to get everything, put it in the RV, and moved all the weapons. After everything was settled, everyone got into the car, and Shizuka drove the new car out of the New Bed City. Next stop, where Saya's house is. After Saya's introduction, everyone knew some of the situation in Saya's family. His father, Soichiro Takagi, was the president of the Worry Country Club, and his mother, Yuriko Gao-chung, was a famous Wall Street trader when he was young. And it's no surprise that Saya, born to two such powerful parents, has a genius mind. It can be said that Saya is a talented girl with many auras. Naruto didn't care much about this, but the other girls seemed very envious. After driving for a while, according to Shay's instructions, the new RV finally came to a living area with beautiful environment. Most of the buildings here are very luxurious and beautiful. It can be seen that most of the people living here are either rich businessmen or high officials, and Shay's home is a huge castle-like building in front of it, with high walls, a huge iron gate, and a row of security guards at the door. All this surprised everyone in the car. Chapter 504 Yuriko's Visit. "Shay, is this your home? How exaggerated. How can it look like a castle?" The world couldn't help crying. Shay smiled and said, "Don't be too surprised, let's get out of the car." Except for Shizuka, including Naruto, everyone else got out of the car at the door and followed Saya to the gate. The girls couldn't help sighing at the luxury here, and Saya went to the security guard at the door as usual. As soon as she walked to the door, the security guard in the security department couldn't help rushing out. When she really saw Saya's face, she couldn't help being surprised and happy. "Miss Saya is back! Miss Saya is back!" the security guard shouted. "Go and inform Lord Gao-chung. Hurry!" Then, another security guard ran quickly into the yard, and the others hurriedly opened the door for Miss Shay. "These are my friends." As soon as the door opened, the security guards looked at Naruto and the others with some vigilance, and Saya said lightly, "Yeah, since it's a friend of the young lady, it's no problem." The security guard hurriedly let the road open to let Naruto and the others enter, and Shizuka drove the RV into the gate as well. After entering, there is a large square, and there are many people busy going back and forth on the square, and in front of it is a tall building that looks like a castle, and the girls can't help but sigh. Just after walking a few steps, a group of figures came out from the gate of the castle. The two people at the head were Saya's parents, Takajo Soichiro and Takajo Yuriko. I saw the two of them, surrounded by a group of subordinates, hurried to Saya. Naruto's eyes fell on the two of them. Soichiro was tall, with a solemn and rough face, with a gleam of light in his eyes under his sword eyebrows, a majestic aura, and his body also faintly exuded a compelling strong aura. And Yuriko, who looks beautiful and extraordinary, is wearing a yuhi-colored open-chested one-piece dress, which tightly outlines her concave and convex curvy figure, high breasts, slender waist, slender thighs, and her head. The pink waist-length hair is slightly scattered behind her, looking graceful and luxurious, with an elegant temperament. "Shay, you child is really worried about us." Seeing her daughter finally returning home, she couldn't help but step forward and said with tears. Saya, who was always arrogant, finally couldn't help crying at this time, threw herself into her mother's arms, and hugged her tightly. After the mother and daughter were gentle for a while, Saya withdrew from Yuriko's arms with a shy face, and looked at Naruto and them shyly. She had always been very strong, but now she threw herself in front of everyone. The mother cried in her arms, and suddenly felt a little embarrassed. "Did you bring Saya back?" At this time, Yuriko looked at the crowd headed by Naruto and asked with a generous smile. Before Naruto and the others could respond, Saya nodded. "I was rescued by senior sister Yako and Naruto, and I followed them out of school after that." Yuriko heard the words, and Soichiro Takajo came to Naruto and Yako, and thanked them sincerely. "Thanks to you, my daughter can come back here safely. We express our deep gratitude for this." After he finished speaking, Soichiro Gaochung said to his subordinates, "Go prepare a banquet, we have to entertain everyone well." The subordinate responded and hurried to prepare. The girls were a little flattered. Fortunately, Naruto didn't feel anything about it. With a faint smile, he followed Saya's parents into the castle. Sayaluo followed her parents and kept telling her mother what she had seen along the way. When talking about some of Naruto's magical abilities, Yuriko couldn't help but look behind her, and Soichiro Takajo was surprised. "Look." The hall of the castle, it was as wide as a square, with lights and candles on the big Jinchuriki column. At a long table, everyone sat down together. Saya's parents sat on the chief, Saya sat aside, and Naruto sat next to Saya. People kept bringing the food up, and it was delicious and wafting with all kinds of aromas. The girls couldn't help but move their index fingers and started to start. These days, they have been eating some supermarket food, like this kind of dishes made by authentic chefs. Haven't tasted it for a few days. During the meal, Soichiro Takagi and Yuriko thanked Naruto, because after Saya told them about Naruto's magic before, both of them became very interested in Naruto. However, Naruto seemed to be very calm, and he just seemed to be indifferent to this. He was eating the meal, and he seemed to be flattered and humiliated by the two of them. This calm demeanor made Soichiro, a high-ranking official and a kendo practitioner, also amazed. "This boy is definitely not easy." And Shay looked very excited. After the meal, Saya's parents arranged a separate room for everyone, and a special person came over to deliver dessert. Naruto was sitting in the room, silently cultivating the chakra in his body. He found that the cultivation of this chakra must rely on the negative energy in a woman's body. Without the help of a woman, if he cultivated alone, all the progress that can be made is very limited. This made Naruto a little distressed. As a result, wouldn't he have to find girls to do it every time he cultivated love? Although, this kind of cultivation method is not boring at all, on the contrary, it is very fragrant. However, he is afraid that the girls will not be able to bear it. "I almost ruined a mature girl like Shizuka last time. A young girl like Yanyi Shiji couldn't bear too much." Thinking about it, Naruto couldn't help but sighed a little depressedly. Just then, the door was knocked, and a voice came from outside. "Naruto, can I come in?" The voice was soft, as if it was Saya's mother, Yuriko. Naruto was stunned for a moment and replied, "Come in." The door was opened, and Yuriko, who was wearing a long yui-colored tight-fitting dress, walked in, with a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. "What's the matter, Aunt Yuriko?" Naruto stood up and asked. Yuriko smiled slightly. "It's nothing, I just want to come over and talk to you about Saya." Shay. Naruto was stunned for a moment and then reacted. He felt a little bit in his heart, and smiled lightly. "Okay, then please sit down first." He moved 2 stools and motioned for Yuriko to sit down. Chapter 505 Temptation of Lily. "Okay." Yuriko chuckled lightly, sat opposite Naruto, gently raised Erlang's legs, revealing the slender white calf under the skirt. Yui-colored high-heeled shoes swaying quietly, a pair of jade feet are crystal clear, perfect flawless. Naruto couldn't help looking at her up and down, and smiled faintly. "Aunt Yuriko is so beautiful, no wonder she gave birth to such a beautiful girl as Saya." Of course, it was just a compliment. Yuriko smiled. "I heard from Saya before I came. She said that you are not good at speaking well. It seems that she has a wrong understanding of you." Naruto sweated, and he didn't know why he suddenly praised her. Maybe it was just because of politeness, or some other reasons. Anyway, he didn't know it very well. He smiled slightly and changed the subject. "Then, Aunt Yuriko, what are you going to talk about with me about Saya?" "Well, let's put it this way. Saya is my only daughter. We love her very much, and she has been very smart since she was a child, and now she is also a genius in school. Ideally, she will become a very promising student. The girl. Yuriko paused slightly when she said this. Seeing that there was no special expression on Naruto's face, she continued, it's just that the current situation has reached the critical moment of human life and death, and the expectations of the past have been all can no longer be realized. Naruto, I heard that you have special abilities, right? Those dead bodies are no longer a threat to you, right? Naruto nodded slightly, looked at her and said, Aunt Yuriko, I'm just a special case. Then, can you show me how amazing you are? Yuriko suddenly stood up, leaned in and smiled at Naruto and said, Saya praised you like a god. Naruto looked up, and saw a deep ravine in the forked neckline of Aunt Yuriko when she bent down slightly, and two bulging hills hung straight down, looking extraordinarily fascinating. Damn it. Naruto quickly looked away and said, isn't that necessary? A gleam of light flashed in Yuriko's eyes. She was very sensitive to notice Naruto's strange gaze just now. She couldn't help but chuckle in her heart. She never thought that she would still be attractive to such a young man. Could it be that Naruto, you still treat Auntie me as an outsider? I really want to see how good you are. The next moment, Yuriko couldn't help showing a strange look on her face, looking at him with a faint expression. Naruto secretly said that the strength of this mature woman is really strong. Facing Yuriko's soft words, his concentration was a little too much. After thinking about it, he could only helplessly agree. Okay, Auntie, you have to look carefully. Naruto stood up. Do you need a weapon? Yuriko suddenly took out a samurai sword from behind and handed it to Naruto. Naruto shook his head slightly. No need. This stool will do, Naruto said. He picked up the stool sitting under him, stretched out his other hand, and opened his palm slightly. Yuriko leaned over and looked at him curiously. At the same time, a faint fragrance from her body spread into Naruto's nose. This is a unique fragrance of mature women, which is intoxicating. Naruto calmed down, the chakra in his body moved slightly, and Rasengan released it. The next moment, a light blue energy suddenly spun out from the palm of his hand, and at the same time there was a flow of breath around him. Seeing this amazing scene, Yuriko couldn't help being stunned. She reached out and held her small mouth with an unbelievable look on her face. Immediately afterwards, the chakra in Naruto's palm spun violently, and in an instant it gathered into a blue energy ball, making a whirring sound of airflow, and a faint blue light spread out. That's it. Naruto smiled faintly when he saw Yuriko, who was shocked, and pressed the Rasengan in his hand to the stool in the other hand. Chi. As soon as the energy ball touched the stool, the surface of the stool was instantly turned into sawdust layer by the force of the powerful energy rotation. In an instant, a hole the size of a bowl was drilled by Rasengan on the surface of the stool. After the performance, Naruto dispersed chakra and said, "Did you see it clearly?" Aunt Yuriko. Hearing Naruto's question, Yuriko just reacted, her beautiful eyes flashing with incomparably stunning brilliance. She stared at Naruto tightly, and suddenly stretched out her jade arm and grabbed Naruto's big hand. Her tone slightly excitedly, he said, "That's great. Naruto, you are as amazing as Saya said. This is simply a magical skill. I have a request, please agree to me." Naruto couldn't help sweating a bit, feeling the feeling of Yuriko's smooth jade hands gripping her tightly, and her heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, it would be a bit inappropriate to show this kind of ninjutsu ability in front of ordinary people. If it weren't for the fact that the world has entered the apocalypse now, it is very likely that a large group of journalists or researchers will come to interview and study in the next moment. Seeing Naruto's expression, Yuriko was stunned for a moment, and then realized that something was wrong with her appearance. She let go of Naruto's big hand like an electric shock. A faint faint flashed on her face, and smiled apologetically. "I am so sorry, I was a little rude just now. Hey, after all, your ability is so unbelievable. After all, what kind of energy balls have only appeared in TV movies, who would use them now?" Naruto smiled slightly. "It's okay, I can understand your mood. But Aunt Yuriko, what was your request just now?" Yuriko heard the words, looked at Naruto's eyes tightly, and sighed slightly. Naruto, you know, the human beings in this world may end at any time, and now they can only stay in only by the side of the strong. Can you protect yourself? My request is to hope that Naruto will take care of Saya. As her mother, I implore you to accept her. Please. After speaking, she bowed deeply towards Naruto. Naruto quickly stepped forward to support her body, holding her slender jade arm with a big hand. Yuriko couldn't help but tremble slightly, raised her head and looked at Naruto with a strange look in her eyes. I will take good care of Saya, and I will never settle for such a doomsday life of escape. One day, I will find the source of the infection and end this doomsday. Chapter 506 Initiative. Yuriko's face couldn't help showing a longing look, and she really hoped that the world could return to its original quiet and peaceful state as Naruto said. But is all this really possible? Perhaps, the Naruto in front of me is really the hope. The two chatted for a while, and Yuriko left. Her original purpose was to find Naruto to entrust her daughter, but now that she has achieved her goal, she can finally breathe a sigh of relief. She still admires Naruto very much. When I talked to him just now, he was neither in a hurry nor impatient, calm and generous, without the anxiety of ordinary young people, and he also had enough self-control, even if it was a face-to-face. Regarding his casual style, he will not show gaffes like other young people. In the end, instead, she herself was first surprised by Naruto and lost her temper. After leaving Naruto's room, Yuriko had already made up her mind. Next, she came to her daughter's room. After sending Yuriko away, Naruto couldn't help but feel a little restless, so he walked out of the room and went to the castle corridor to breathe. Looking at the sky in the distance, the sun is setting, and the earth is covered with a layer of golden light. On the square of the castle, the people are not listening to what they are busy with. Outside the castle, the dead are wandering around, except inside the castle. Outside there are hardly any living people. Naruto sighed slightly. He thought he had come to a comfortable and peaceful modern world. He didn't expect that it would suddenly become a zombie hell in the past 2 days. Such a difference really came too quickly and suddenly. Z disrupted his cultivation plan. Now, only after arranging the people around you can you make other plans. He took a deep breath and walked along the corridor to the door of a room. The most important thing right now is cultivation. If you train your strength to the peak, maybe you can take the girls here to cross. Away from this apocalypse, even entering the world of Hokage is better than this incomparably chaotic place. After knocking on the door, a brisk female voice came from inside. Who is it? It's me, Naruto replied. Yeah, big brother Naruto is here. The door was opened with a whimper, and a little girl stood at the door pretty, with the dog Jiku lying on top of her head. It's Alice. Naruto squeezed her cheek with a smile and walked into the house. In the room, in addition to Alice, there are other people, Yan Yi, Gui Shin, Shiji, Otome, Mommy. They seem to be staying together and discussing some interesting things. Come giggling coquettish laughter. However, when they saw Naruto, they all had a Yuhi expression on their faces, and quickly stopped fighting, making a quiet and peaceful look. Closing the door, Naruto walked over with a smile and said, "What are you talking about? We're having such a good time chatting. Go on." The girls looked at each other, and Yuhi didn't answer anymore. Because they were discussing the love thing they did with Naruto at Shizuka's friend's house last time. It's okay for them to talk about these things in private, so how can they talk about it in front of Naruto? That would be too shameless. They didn't want Naruto to feel like a slutty woman. Therefore, the girls shut up and stopped talking. After being quiet for a while, Gui Shin suddenly stuck out her tongue towards Naruto, ran over and pulled Alice up to open the door and left. Brother Naruto, just continue with your sister and the others. Improve your relationship. I'll take Alice out to play. When my sister and the others were talking together just now, she also overheard it, so at this time, after saying a word to Naruto with a giggling smile, she hurriedly ran out. Naruto couldn't help but glared at her, secretly saying that this little girl really needs to be cleaned up, and she is becoming more and more small. Shaking his head helplessly, Naruto came to Yanyi and the others, and saw that the girls were all sitting on the big bed, taking off their shoes and bare white feet. Because of each other's teasing, everyone was wearing clothes. It was more or less messy. After Naruto sat down, he naturally felt the spring light on the girls. "Naruto, what's the matter with you here?" Mommy said in a greasy voice when she saw Naruto sitting over. She immediately rushed over, wrapping her jade arms around Naruto's neck. The bulging chest pressed against the back of Naruto's head, giving him an unusually soft enjoyment. Naruto smiled. "Can't I come to play with you if I have nothing to do?" "No, it's just that we usually come to play with you, but you rarely come to us," Mommy exclaimed, sticking out her tongue. Hearing her say this, Naruto couldn't help but stun for a moment, thinking about it. That's true. In the past, girls took the initiative to find themselves. Even when doing H's business, he only went when the girl took the initiative to post it. "Greetings, thinking about it now, I'm really not considerate enough in this regard. I can't let girls take the initiative in everything." After thinking for a while, he stretched out his hand and embraced Yanyi and the world beside him, and said with a laugh, "Then I want to ask you to do H's business now, are you willing?" The four girls couldn't help but exclaimed, and immediately a deep Yuhi dizziness appeared on their faces. That, Yanyi pulled his clothes, raised Yuhi's dizzy pretty face, and said shyly, "Naruto, this is not good." The world glanced at Yanyi, and hesitantly said, "Yes, I feel so shy." At this time, Mommy, who was lying on Naruto's back, laughed. "Hee, didn't everyone do it together last time? Why are you so shy now?" That was that time." Okay, it's rare for Naruto to take such initiative today, we have to cooperate with him." Otome on the side got out of bed with a smile, came to Naruto and knelt down between his legs, pushing the world and Yanyi away. He opened the zipper of Naruto's trousers, reached in and took out Naruto's brother, looked up at Naruto and the other three women, smiled slightly. "Just start with me. Let me give Naruto, let someone serve you." Quote. After she finished speaking, she opened her mouth and took it towards Naruto's brother, ate it in her mouth, and made a chirp chirp. Almost instantly Naruto stood tall, filling Otome's mouth with almost all of it. "Can't let go." Okay, that's amazing. Otome had a hard time eating with such a large size. She vomited after eating for a while, and Yuhi cried out with a dizzy face. Chapter 507. Listen to the bed. Yuhi's face rose and turned her head away, not daring to look, and their whole body became slightly hot and weak. "Otome, you are so lewd and slutty." The world couldn't help laughing and scolding. Naruto grabbed the slender waist of the world, reached into her slightly open clothes, grabbed the soft little pigeon, pinched it a few times, and the world groaned and groaned, soft enough to be in Naruto's arms. Just as Yanyi wanted to leave and run away, Naruto grabbed her tender little foot, followed her slender calf with a big hand and climbed directly to the secret place between her legs. As soon as his fingers were hooked, his trousers flew up, and as soon as he entered, Yanyi's small mouth opened, weak and petulant, panting. Good or bad? Naruto, how can this be?" Yanyi shouted while pushing Naruto with her hand, but her refusal was so weak, and the protest in her mouth became subtle moaning and moaning. Naruto couldn't help but smile when he saw the condition of the two women. Mommy, who was behind her, was already hot all over. Seeing that Naruto had gotten three girls at once, she couldn't help but pouted. She took off her clothes in dissatisfaction, and then ripped off Naruto's clothes, revealing his well-proportioned muscles, holding his own pair of tits and breasts in both hands, and pressing them against his back. "You three are so cunning." Mammy's pair of jade arms hooked Naruto's neck from behind, and the stalwart front of her chest squeezed tightly against Naruto's back, pressing out an exaggerated arc, still rubbing up and down. Beneath her body, there is Otome's mouth, and behind her, there is Mammy's chest. Her left hand holds the jade and milk of the world, and her right hand feels the tender part of Yanyi. Naruto couldn't help but enjoy himself. After a while, there were all kinds of jow, panting, and the sound of the big bed shaking from the room. And Naruto also took advantage of this time to silently run the chakra in his body and practice. Although the girls' first time was destroyed by themselves, there is still a lot of negative energy in their bodies. Under the absorption and refinement of Naruto, they soon entered a state. An hour later, Naruto lay on the big bed and let the girls take turns to sit on his body and exercise, while he carefully experienced the pleasure of doing and loving, while quietly practicing chakra. This feeling is simply awesome. And because he was practicing, Naruto was so unstoppable under him that he kept doing it for an hour, sending the 4 women to the top in turns, but there was no sign of spraying, which made the girls greatly admired. Naruto is so powerful, and after working for more than an hour, it is still as hard as iron, and when it is inserted into his body, he will almost make himself fly into the clouds. At this time, outside the door, Yuriko, who walked out of Saya's room, just wanted to chat with other girls, but just as she was about to knock on the door, she heard various voices from inside. Naruto, you are amazing. It's been over an hour and you haven't shot. Well, I'll do it this time. You lose the world in less than 10 minutes every time. It's useless. Wow, aren't you the same? I'd say Mommy-san is more durable. How can I have it? In fact, it is the most powerful in the world. Ah, what? How did it get involved with me? Yuriko outside the door was stunned. 1 2 3 4. 4 voices. 5p. This. How could this be? Last time I remembered that Naruto was not so powerful. Otone was sitting on Naruto while exercising, her pretty buttocks hitting Naruto and making a popping sound. Every time she was deeply the entry made her feel the trembling of her lower body, as if she might enter a state of convulsions at any time. Naruto, on the other hand, had his hands behind his head, his face looked relaxed and comfortable, and his body was running chakra silently. He found that when cultivating this kind of chakra to absorb the negative energy of the girl, you will become invincible, even if you want to shoot. After more than an hour of practice, the chakra in Naruto has made great progress. Although not a lot, it has also increased by nearly 30%. This is so fast. However, the only drawback is that the longer you spend time with a girl, the less negative energy you can absorb. If this continues, sooner or later there will be a problem of not being able to cultivate anymore. While Naruto thought about it, he slightly moved his body to meet the girl's impact. After a while, the girls were too tired to do anything, lying on Naruto's chest coquettishly, but Naruto's body was still standing upright as before, and there was no sign of softening at all. The girls frowned in distress and wanted to get up and continue, but they couldn't do it again with their tender bodies. Naruto, what's the matter with you today? Why, how can you be so powerful? Mommy asked, kissing Naruto's chest. Naruto put his hand on the girl's smooth, creamy skin, stroking back and forth, experiencing the delicate feeling of the girls. Hearing their questions, Naruto couldn't help laughing bitterly and said apologetically, actually, when I was with you, I was cultivating. Cultivation. The girls stood up one after another and looked at him with puzzled expressions. Why are you so good when you are cultivating? I thought to myself, if distracted cultivation can still be so powerful, if you do it wholeheartedly and do it yourself, wouldn't it kill people? However, Naruto's next words surprised the girls even more. Actually, I found a very important thing, that is, when I have sex with you, it will be good for my cultivation. What's going on? The girls stared at him in surprise, their faces full of curiosity and puzzlement. Maybe it's because of a problem with my cultivation method. In short, I need to be able to cultivate most effectively and increase my strength when I have sex with you. Naruto explained, and then apologized said, sorry, it might be unfair to you. After all, having sex with girls for the sake of cultivation, love, this is a very disrespectful thing for girls. However, the girls also understand Naruto very well. In this apocalypse full of disasters, the only way out is to have power, and the stronger Naruto's power, the safer they will be. Who wouldn't want their man to be stronger? Chapter 508 We help you practice. In that case, we 1010 will help you cultivate in the future. The world said with concern. Yeah, as long as you can help me, you'll be fine even if you take me to practice for a day. Otome also said earnestly. Yanyi nodded, silently climbed onto Naruto's body, stretched out his hand to open his buttocks, and sat down with a puff while supporting Naruto's brother. I'll continue to help Naruto practice right now. Although she was so tired that she was panting and couldn't sit up, she still lay on top of him, constantly lifting her delicate buttocks. Naruto, shoo, is the cultivation effective? While exercising, Yanyi curiously looked at Naruto's reaction. Naruto was moved by the understanding of the girls and stopped tossing them. He lifted up Yanyi's body and stepped out of her body and said, "You guys have a good rest, today's practice is enough." The girls nodded and all lay down on the big bed and rested according to their words, while Naruto got up and put on his clothes, said goodbye to them and left the room. However, he was stunned as soon as he opened the door. Because Yuriko was standing at the door, Yuhi's face was full of dizziness, and she looked extremely flustered and overwhelmed. Naruto, how are you? But Yuriko heard the whole process outside the door. The girl's obscene words, as well as those unpleasant contents, made her whole body slightly hot, especially below. At this time, a lot of water stains have oozing out, and both legs are a little weak. Aunt Yuriko, what's the matter with you? Naruto also looked embarrassed, and secretly screamed badly. She didn't hear something, did she? But it shouldn't be so coincidental. If she came over when she opened the door, she would definitely not have heard the movement in the room before. So comforting himself, a smile appeared on Naruto's face. No, it's alright. Yuriko avoided Naruto's eyes in a panic, and quickly turned to leave. However, as soon as she moved her feet, she suddenly felt that her legs were weak, and she accidentally fell towards the back. What? A soft whimper came from her mouth. Fortunately, at this time, a pair of big hands stretched out to hug her mature tender body. Naruto. Yuriko lay in Naruto's arms, looked up at Naruto for a few seconds, and finally woke up and quickly stood up and left his embrace. Are you all right, Aunt Yuriko? Naruto asked strangely, always feeling that something was wrong with her. Could it be that she really discovered the movement inside? It's alright, hee. Thank you Naruto, I was too careless. Yuriko panicked a little, then finally regained her composure and said, I want to talk to them. They should have been resting. Naruto was startled and said quickly. Oh, if that's the case, then I won't disturb them. Yuriko was also eager to get rid of this embarrassing situation. Hearing Naruto say this, she quickly replied and left in a hurry. Naruto looked at her back a little strangely, but from the angle behind her, Yuriko's figure was better than Saya's. Although she had given birth to a child, her chest showed no signs of sagging at all, and her lower abdomen was also very smooth. Slim. At this time, Yuriko's legs and feet were a little weak when she walked. Her bottom was already soaked. When she heard the words of those girls, Chunin couldn't help but think of Naruto's golden gun. To him, she, a mature woman, would have the feeling that she couldn't look directly. Could it be that Naruto is really a golden gun? She couldn't help but have such a thought in her mind, and she was taken aback by herself, and quickly dismissed such a shameful thought. Shaking her head, Yuriko returned to her room and sighed. Speaking of which, she hadn't had sex with her husband for a long time. Since he was busy with government affairs and practicing kendo every day, there have been fewer and fewer intercourse between husband and wife. She hasn't sat for more than 2 months recently. She is also a mature woman and needs to be comforted. Sitting on the bed, she couldn't help being a little ecstatic. After a while, she came back to her senses. After thinking about it, she became worried again. Naruto actually had a relationship with all 4 girls. If so, what about the other girls he brought? Is it also related to him? Is it right to entrust Saya to him? For a time, Yuriko couldn't help but tangled in her heart. Naruto, on the other hand, came to the corridor of the castle refreshed, stretched his waist, and realized that there was 30% more chakra in his body than before. He was extremely satisfied. At this speed of cultivation, wouldn't it be possible to reach Kage level a few more times? Or even higher? And, once the chakra is restored to its previous level, does it mean that a way to travel through can be found? Naruto couldn't help but have more expectations in his heart. This special chakra with yin and yang attributes can be compared with the power of nature. If it can be cultivated to the peak, what kind of changes will it produce? While thinking about it, the sky was completely dark, and night fell. Looking up, he suddenly saw a bus coming in through the security office next to the gate not far below the castle. Naruto couldn't help but be stunned. Wasn't that car the one he drove with Shizuka and the others when he left Fujimi Academy? Wasn't it given to Wisteria and those students later? Unexpectedly, they still survived and came here alive. I saw Soichiro Takajo coming downstairs to greet him. Naruto also came downstairs, but found that Rei, Shizuka, Yuko, and Kiriko were also there. At the gate, the bus stopped at the gate, and a tall and thin figure jumped down from it, wearing glasses, his eyes flashing with a cold light from time to time. It was Wisteria Koichi. He seems to have come here after a lot of hard work, and the clothes on his body are still the same as before he left. Although he doesn't look very embarrassed, deep in his eyes, there is deep fatigue and fear. And crazy. And just when Shido Hiroshi jumped out of the car and was about to come in, Miyamoto Rei, who was beside Naruto, couldn't help but dash forward with the rifle in his hand, approaching him. Koichi Shido, you scum with a face here. Chapter 509 Tragedy in Paris. Paris, France. This is a place known to the world as the capital of romance. Here, there is a touch of romance everywhere, and you can often see all kinds of romantic things between men and women on the street. And here, there is also a world-famous Eiffel Tower, making the city a world-famous tourist capital. A few months ago, a friend from the world of Shuan Temple followed his parents to this place in an instant and entered the local academy. But here, Shenna didn't get used to it quickly. For her, all the foreigners here, and the local female students around her were also a little bit repulsive, especially when she was 16 or 17 years old and she was still so petite and small. Became the object of ridicule by the female students on the first day here. However, she doesn't care about these moments, because she still remembers her former friends, the world, Naruto and the others. Whenever a person returns home, she will call the world, and occasionally send Naruto a text message, and after getting their response, she will feel that she still has friends in this world. Yes, she is not alone. Thinking about it this way, even if the surrounding environment is unfamiliar and the people around her reject it, she will not feel so miserable. On the contrary, she will study more actively, hoping that she will go back to find her best friend after she has learned something in the future. However, it didn't take long for such a melancholy but hopeful life to end in a catastrophe all over the world. Compared to now, she would rather go back to the days in the past. Because no matter how unfamiliar the people around them, and the indifferent eyes of classmates, they would not be like zombies crawling out of hell one by one, madly biting the crowd around them. It's a hellish world. It's been 3 days like this. In these 3 days, I saw countless blood and disasters, the mourning and fearful expressions of countless people, and the desperate faces of countless people who were struggling to die. But fortunately, shortly after the disaster struck, the army stationed in the vicinity immediately reacted and dispatched all-out efforts to destroy the mutated dead bodies. Those who were not yet infected were rescued. And Moan was one of these survivors, but her parents were separated from her. Now, she and the local survivors are staying in a Christian church. Because of the guards of the army, it is very safe to stay here every day, and a certain amount of food is delivered. However, the survivors who stayed in the Christian church were very frightened and helpless at first, even in an instant, because there was still no news from her parents, she was waiting for her parents to be sent here surviving. However, 3 days later, she still has no news. Like other survivors, there are no relatives around, and the outside is full of terrifying zombies. I can only sit in a corner of this church and pray silently all day long. If Jesus really existed in this world, how much she hoped that Jesus would come to the world to save her people who were in despair. This can only be a consolation. In the church, apart from eating and sleeping, there is only daily prayer. It seems that this will save the world and people, or, when she prays, the world will be restored. Unfortunately, all this is not a dream, but a cruel reality. In the past 3 days, her body has become thinner and thinner. Every day, while thinking of her parents, what she thinks most about is friends in the distance, the world, and Naruto. Yuhi colored bow on her hair. At the beginning, he had taken it off, but he said a lot of inexplicable and strange things. Make it difficult for yourself to understand. But now, after thinking about it carefully, she feels that things are not so simple. Could it be that what Naruto said that day was true? But who would foolishly believe that kind of thing? Maybe it was just a joke by Naruto. Anyway, now she has no time to think about it. Instead, she is a little worried about her friends who are in the distance. Is it the same for them, and the world is also in an incomparable panic? In this church, there is no TV, and the electronic equipment is no longer available. The mobile phone has no signal. At first, I couldn't even call my parents. How can I contact my friends in Japan now? She sighed helplessly, and stood up slowly in an instant. She saw that everyone around her was praying, but some people were irritably scolding, and some people even had quarrels and fights. This desperate world. Is everyone really desperate? Moment raised her head and looked at the window above the church. Through the glass, she saw the dim sky. At this moment, there was a sudden gunshot outside the church, and everyone couldn't help but stunned for a moment, and immediately became agitated and rushed to the door of the church in unison. The guards at the door reached out to stop everyone and shouted, "Calm down. Be calm. This is just a small number of dead bodies, and they will be wiped out soon." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they heard it. This situation has happened several times in the past few days. Every gunshot affects everyone's nerves, but fortunately, those monsters can be dealt with every time. People can live temporarily. After being comforted, everyone breathed a sigh of relief, and went back to their original places to pray again, looking forward to the Lord's redemption. However, this time, the sound of gunfire did not gradually decrease as usual. Instead, it became more and more urgent and closer. Finally, everyone began to feel uneasy and felt that something was wrong in an instant. The denser and closer the gunshots are, does this mean that the dead bodies are gradually approaching? Ah! Suddenly, a shrill scream broke the peace in the church, and the next moment, the screams became more and more, but the gunshots became less and less. What's the matter? Those screams, are these soldiers making them? The situation is not good. Are those monsters going to rush in? Quick! Run away! Someone finally shouted to run away. Boom! In an instant, everyone in the church was boiling. The guards at the door tried to block it, but they couldn't stop it at all. In order to escape, the crowd was constantly restless. If you don't escape, this place will definitely be captured by the dead. Who will be able to escape the fate of being torn apart by the dead? Chapter 510 Hellish Church. Looking at Rei and Kiriko who were glaring at Koichi Wisteria in front of them, Naruto stood by and watched lightly. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Over the past few days, Rei also intermittently recounted how Koichi Shito ignored the lives of the students at that time, and how he forced those students, including Takao Komuro, into a desperate situation. After listening to Lee's remarks, the girls were very angry, and Kiriko also hated the Wisteria family to the core, because their political father warned Lee's father of the Ministry of Public Security, and even repeated Lee's grades. Therefore, Lee also wanted to kill him with one shot. However, Even if she was so resolute and decisive when dealing with dead bodies, if she really wanted to kill people, she still couldn't do it. At this time, seeing Lee hesitating and not daring to make a real move, Shido Hiroshi suddenly showed a righteous look on his face, and said, "Student Lee, my choice was also for everyone's safety, but if it is for the sake of everyone's life and safety. If you save someone and sacrifice everyone's life, this kind of thing is meaningless. Now that you are safe, don't you accept people like me who think about the overall situation? Then what is the difference between you and me? It's just that it's nothing more than reckless actions based on personal preferences." Rei and Kiriko couldn't help but be stunned, and the other girls were also stunned. Shido Koichi's words suddenly made them unable to refute, but, because of this, he was the one who talked big and talked about the big picture. Disgusting. Damn it, you're just using the students as tools. The big picture you're talking about is just controlling everyone with your own will. Stop talking nonsense here. If you don't get out, I'll kill you. Lee raised her rifle sharply, the black muzzle aimed at Wisteria's head, her eyes full of murderous intent. A trace of fear flashed in Wisteria's eyes, but he quickly calmed down again, spread out his hands, and showed a helpless look on his face. "I'm just here to ask for help. This has nothing to do with you, right? You are now shutting me out. Isn't it also a form of hegemony when you do this?" "You." Lee stared at him with staring eyes. She couldn't compare to this guy in any way, and now she was so angry that she shot. Such a bastard dared to come and be arrogant in front of her. Simply unbearable. Ha ha ha, kill me, those things still can't be changed. Instead, they will continue to haunt you, and you will also be accused of being a murderer because of this. Suddenly, Wisteria laughed wildly, and in Lee's hands his rifle twitched slightly, and he almost shot him out. She struggled in her heart, and she was full of anger and hatred for him, but if she killed him, she would really be charged with murder and crime. Kiriko looked at her daughter, walked over suddenly, lightly held the gun barrel in her daughter's hand, and said lightly, "Lee, calm down, this kind of guy is not worth killing." Lee was stunned for a moment, then turned to see her mother's smiling face. She finally slowly put down her rifle and nodded slightly. "Yes, Mom, you're right, this kind of scum, killing him is just dirtying our hands." Seeing the sharp military thorn leaving his head, Wisteria couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, but at the same time he was also full of unwillingness. He didn't expect that he would be so belittled by two women, but at this time there was no way to resist and retaliate. Naruto couldn't help but smile, although he didn't know much about Wisteria, but after listening to Lee's description, such a person is considered a hero, but unfortunately he has no power and can only be eliminated in the end times. "You better get out of the way." At this moment, Soichiro Takagi, who had not spoken, said. Wisteria trembled and looked at everyone with unwillingness and resentment, but could only turn around and leave. Watching their car leave the gate of the courtyard wall, everyone returned to the hall again. At this time, night has come. As for what will happen to Wisteria and the others, everyone no longer cares. Such people will never live long in the apocalypse. To Naruto, this was just a small episode. No matter how noisy Shido Hiro repeated, it was just a clown jumping on the beam. He had no interest at all, but it was a pity for those students who fled with him. It's probably going to be miserable. Back upstairs, Naruto went back to the room, ready to sit down and practice. At this moment, he suddenly frowned, a look of surprise flashed across his face, and the next moment, he reached out and made a slight seal. Inside the huge Christ Church in Paris, France. Just a few minutes ago, a large group of panicked people wanted to rush out of the church to survive, but they did not expect that after rushing out, the result of waiting for them was death, because when they just walked out of the church, they found that the surrounding area of the church was actually surrounded by people. Surrounded by a large group of dead bodies, 3 floors inside and 3 floors, there are thousands of dead bodies, and they all rushed towards the church. The original soldiers who were guarding near the church were constantly blocking bombs, submachine guns, shotguns, all kinds of hot weapons, bullets flying, and explosions, but this time there were too many dead bodies, rushing in soldiers on the front lines were soon overwhelmed and torn apart by waves of dead bodies. The people who rushed out were stunned when they saw this desperate scene. When they reacted, they found that the dead bodies had already rushed to the door of the church, and they were only a few steps away. At this distance, people have no way to escape, the only way out of the church door is blocked, and everyone is desperate. They began to run back into the church. They started crowding and started desperately trying to get back inside. However, the people who fell behind were soon torn apart by the dead bodies that rushed up, and then, one after another, the living were dragged away and dragged into the pile of dead bodies, and it was unknown whether they were eaten or killed. Shredded. Moreover, among the crowds, many people were trampled to death by others. The crowd fell into panic, screaming in despair, and the soldiers guarding had run out of ammunition and were pounced on by the dead one by one. In the church, I stared blankly at the silhouette of the door that kept squeezing in, and the dead body of Zhang Qiba dancing claws that suddenly appeared behind. At this moment, death was so close. Chapter 511 Horizon's Rescue. Quick, run! Finally, the people who were still in the church shouted and ran backwards, and they reacted in an instant, and hurriedly followed everyone towards the back door of the church and ran away. However, there were too many people running away and it was too messy, and the petite body in the crowd was like a small boat in the ocean. It was crowded around by people, and was crowded out of the crowd all of a sudden. Lagged behind. But at this time, just as she was about to catch up, a guy beside her gave her a hard push. What? With a scream, his body was immediately pushed away and fell to the ground. It hurts. She hurriedly stretched out her hand to cover her knees, with tears in her eyes, looking helplessly at the people who were constantly fleeing to the back door in front of her, and she could only sit there and wait for the approach of a dead body not far away. Biting Silver Kiba secretly, he quickly moved to the side of a Jinchuriki column, holding his knees with both hands, keeping silent, longing for those dead bodies not to find themselves. However, such a hope is so slim. In a short period of time, the dead bodies have bitten the bodies of many people, and the survivors are also killed one by one, gradually becoming one dead body after another. In the church, it was completely messed up, and people's mourning came from one after another, and the ears were filled with countless screams of despair. The church is no longer a church, it has become hell. Instantly holding her knees with both hands, the pain prevented her from standing up, so she could only lean back on the cold Jinchuriki column and wait to die. At this time, how much she hopes to wait for the redemption of Jesus. It's a pity that she also knows what a powerless struggle it is to pray at this time. At this moment, she suddenly raised her head and found a dead body in front of her slowly walking towards her. The other party's waist was missing a big hole, the intestines inside were exposed, and there was an eyeball on the head. I don't know where it fell. Such a dead body made his heart almost stop beating in an instant. No, don't come here. She murmured to herself, her mind almost fell into a blank space. Is she really going to die? Is it really going to be eaten by such a terrifying monster? Will I never see my parents again, never see my friends again? In an instant, my heart was filled with despair. She huddled there holding her head, slowly closing her eyes and waiting for death. Suddenly, her hands touched the bow on top of her head, and a familiar scene suddenly appeared in her mind. Correct, Naruto. She suddenly thought of that absurd joke. Naruto, I hope it's really as you said. She murmured and took off the bow tie on her head, and her soft black hair slowly fell down. Looking at the dead body in front of her that kept walking towards her, a flash of determination flashed on her face. At this time, even if there was a trace of hope, she would never give up. Although Naruto said it very mysteriously at the time, it made people feel a little bit. I can't believe it, but now, this is the last ray of hope. Or rather, it's a struggle for survival. Instantly lowering his head, seeing the bloody wound on his knee, he gently pressed the yuhi-colored bow on it. The next moment, something magical happened. A golden light suddenly flashed in front of her eyes, and the next moment, a young man with short golden hair instantly appeared beside her. It's Naruto. On that side, he suddenly sensed that the spatial coordinates that were far away in the moment had been touched, and he knew that there was danger here, so he moved to this side in an instant. Just after he arrived, Wei Wei looked up in surprise and looked around, and found that this was actually a church, and the surroundings were full of wailing and screaming, and in front of him was a dead body with its head hanging. Behind him, Momo looked up at each other blankly. This back, this blonde hair, who is Naruto and who is this? Is everything he said true? He really appeared beside him now. Naruto, suddenly hesitantly called out to him. Naruto turned his head, a bright smile on his face. She was stunned for a moment. At this moment, she was like a dream. He was really Naruto. He really does teleport. He really came to his side. Are you all right? Naruto saw her staring at him in a daze, so he could not help but walk over and squat down, looking at the bright and clean legs exposed under his short skirt, and the blood of Yin Yuhi that kept coming out of her knees. I fell. Does it hurt? The gentle voice made her whole body tremble. She stared at him blankly, and her eyes finally showed a look of incomparable surprise. You, really Naruto? She suddenly grabbed Naruto's hands excitedly and pulled him and shouted, you are alive too, you are really here. At this moment, she didn't know how surprised, shocked, she didn't expect that what she thought was a joke turned out to be true. What he said was the truth. Naruto stretched out his hand and gently covered the wound of the instant. Sana, I am late, sorry. A bright green light suddenly rose from the palm of the hand, and a cool and comfortable feeling came from the knee. This is... She was stunned again. Naruto's hand would still glow. And when I put it on my wound, there is no more blood coming out of the wound, and most of the pain is gone in an instant. Naruto, are you a god? At this time, she had to ask. Appears next to the person instantly, and it will also glow for medical treatment. After listening to her words, Naruto couldn't help laughing and laughing. He withdrew his hand and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. I'm here to save you, but I'm not a god. Get up first. In an instant, he was helped up by him, and he leaned against him. Suddenly, she covered her mouth and whispered, be careful. The dead body was rushing towards the two of them. Naruto glanced at it. He had already noticed the movement, and he didn't see any movement. The neck of the dead body was cut in two as if it had been cut by an invisible blade. Let's go. Naruto took the moment's tender body, and said lightly, leave here and go round with others. Seeing this astonishing scene in an instant, she couldn't help but widen her beautiful eyes and asked, Naruto, is this what you did? Naruto nodded slightly. Get out of here, and join us to find a new way out. Okay, it's amazing. She looked up at Naruto blankly for a moment. At this moment, she felt like she had fallen into heaven. Chapter 512 Crazy Sand Zombies. It's too messy here, I'll take you back. Naruto saw the countless dead bodies rushing around, and said to Moan with his head down. In an instant, she finally came back to her senses, and she responded and suddenly asked, Naruto, you are so powerful, can you deal with the monsters here? Have you solved it all? Instantly nodded with anticipation. You are so powerful, you must be able to do it, right? Seeing the look of anticipation on her face, Naruto looked around again, watching the scene of a group of dead bodies constantly chasing and killing the survivors, and finally nodded, I can try my best. Come on my back, he exclaimed suddenly. Moment was stunned for a moment, then immediately nodded in response, reached out and was picked up by Naruto, and then climbed onto his broad back. Yuhi, Wei Wei responded, okay. Well, you have to hold me tight. Naruto said. Yes. In an instant, a pair of small jade arms wrapped tightly around Naruto's neck, and a pair of slender long legs also hooked Naruto's waist. Under the short skirt, two white and tender thighs were exposed on Naruto's waist. Seeing that she was already lying on his back like an octopus, Naruto suddenly rushed towards the door of the church, and at the same time shouted at the people who were still running around, go to one run in the direction. Everyone heard Naruto's voice, but everyone was running away. Who would care about Naruto's words? Cut. It's really troublesome. Naruto curled his lips, stretched out a few self-made detonating talismans on his body, and slammed them on the ground at the door of the church. At this moment, a group of dead bodies heard the movement and rushed towards Naruto. In an instant, hurry up, Naruto urged. With a slight kick under his feet, he suddenly raised his head, moved his body, and jumped towards the top of the church. Ah, Naruto. Moment never thought that Naruto would suddenly jump out into the sky. The sudden movement made Momo's hand slip and he couldn't grasp it at all, and his body was about to fall away from Naruto. Naruto just wanted to release the ninjutsu in the mid-air hand seal. When he saw this, he quickly stretched out his hand to hold her delicate buttocks down. His face turned Yuhi, and he didn't fall, but he felt his buttocks rise. The hot hands made her heart skip a beat. Swish. The next moment, Naruto appeared directly on the ceiling with his back on his back, and ran on his feet with chakra, so that his feet were tightly attached to it, head and foot. In an instant, she almost fell off Naruto's body again, but fortunately this time, she hugged Naruto's waist with both hands, and her thighs also tightly wrapped around Naruto, so she didn't fall off him. Hurry up, Naruto urged her. She suddenly calmed down and opened her eyes, only to see a group of survivors who were chased and fled everywhere. Naruto quickly made a few seals with his hands. The next moment, a powerful momentum emanated from him, and at the same time, there were many tiny airflow fluctuations in the air below him. Futon, wind style, wind blade. Call, call, call. In an instant, countless tiny wind blades were produced in the fluctuation of the airflow, and each wind blade accurately flew towards the head of the dead body in the church below. Chi chi chi. The next moment, almost at the same time, all the dead bodies in the church were pierced by the wind blade, bloodshot, and Naruto's body slowly descended from the ceiling. Yes, saved. Those who were struggling on the brink of death suddenly found that all the dead bodies around them fell to the ground inexplicably. They didn't see who killed these dead bodies, and they didn't hear the sound of gunshots at all. Involuntarily, Chi-Chi froze in place. However, at this time, the dead bodies at the door of the church were still pouring in frantically, and they kept making terrifying screams. Naruto saw this slightly. He stretched out his hand to make a seal, and drank softly. Break. Boom boom boom. As if a blockbuster exploded, a large fire burst out from the door of the church in an instant, and the dead bodies that were rushing in towards the door were almost all blown into pieces. Even the door of the church was blasted with a large gap. Naruto fell to the ground, and the dead bodies outside were still pouring in frantically. In an instant, he looked at all the fallen dead bodies in the church, and the deep pit that appeared on the spot after the explosion. She couldn't understand this kind of thing at all. She could only stare blankly at the man she was hugging. The one in the church has been dealt with, and the next thing to do is to go out. Are you ready for the instant? Naruto turned back and looked at the instant. In an instant, he almost lost his ability to think, and he was thinking in his heart, is he a god? Is it God? How could one person have such power? He is absolutely God. Suddenly, an astonishing ecstasy appeared on his face. A pair of jade arms hugged Naruto's neck tightly and nodded vigorously. Yeah. I'm ready. At this moment, her heart is full of hope. My prayers finally worked. Naruto is the angel that Jesus has always arranged by his side. Futon, wind style, vacuum Taiyu. At this time, Naruto saw another wave of dead bodies rushing into the church from behind. He quickly hand-sealed with both hands, and suddenly spit out a huge chakra wind bomb from his mouth. Extremely the compressed wind power suddenly surged out and madly crushed it towards the door of the church. Boom! The door of the church was broken through in an instant, and it became a huge circular hole. The wind bombs rolled back with the dead bodies that came up, and they were crushed into pieces of meat. Hurry up! Naruto rushed forward, following the huge wind bomb, and almost instantly opened up a vacuum road several meters wide among the dead bodies. Boom! The huge wind bomb slammed into a building, and with the loud noise, the building was torn apart, and the gravel, smoke and dust rolled into the sky. In an instant, he was frightened by this incomparably powerful destructive power. Naruto, is this the power of God? During the march, when Naruto heard the question, he couldn't help but smile. I'm not a god, I'm just an ordinary person with special powers. In other words, there are too many dead bodies here, even if I don't care anymore. How to destroy it? There will still be more gatherings around here, and my power is not unlimited. I am afraid I can't fulfill your request. In that case, can you help me find my parents? Shanna looked at him and said. Chapter 513 Must Persevere. In a huge manor, inside a castle-like building. Everyone gathered together and stayed in the hall nervously. Hurry up and evacuate here. The gate was destroyed by dead bodies, and this place will soon be captured. Soichiro Takagi called towards the girls beside him. Lord Suichiro, hurry up and retreat. We will block this place. A subordinate rushed into the door and shouted anxiously. Prepare to fight. He suddenly pulled out his samurai sword and walked out of the gate to the square. I saw that around the manor square, a group of his subordinates were holding weapons to block the dead bodies that were constantly pouring in from the collapsed doorway. Damn, how did these guys get in? Someone shouted around. What bastard brought them here? Before, the manor was still peaceful. Although there were dead bodies wandering on the street one after another, but without disturbing them, the place was still safe for the time being. I didn't expect that these dead bodies would come around so quickly. This makes absolutely no sense. However, they didn't know that the culprit of all this was laughing in the bus not far away. He was the one who was driven away by Koichi Wisteria. He was not willing to be fooled like this, so he took revenge. It was very simple. He drove a car and drove wildly on the road full of dead bodies. When he attracted a large number of dead bodies, he stopped at the gate of Saya's house, and then quickly changed into a bus and fled. In the process, of course, there are also huge dangers. If he didn't drive fast enough and plan the route in advance, he would not have been able to escape safely. And now, his bus was parked not far from Shay's house, and he watched the manor's fiery battle in the car, with a smug smile on his face. Let you shut me out. Let you disdain to kill me. Now I want you to regret it. He drove the bus towards the back of Saya's house. At this time, the people in the manor could no longer care about these things. They were fighting frantically. Fortunately, the Saya family was strong, and every subordinate had weapons and firearms in their hands. Those dead bodies could not rush in for the time being. At this time, Yazi and the others also rushed out of the gate with weapons and came to the square. Seeing the fierce battle, they could not help frowning. Where did Naruto go? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Yako asked. We don't know either. We searched all the rooms and couldn't find him. Shizuka and Yanyi responded anxiously. Cut. Really, I think Naruto must be in a temporary situation. With his teleportation power, even if we go to other places, we can't know. Yazi bit Kiba slightly. Then now, we must go and fight. Yeah, we're going to fight here until he comes back. Miyamoto Rei said firmly, holding the rifle in her hand. Very good. I didn't expect you all to have such an awareness. However, the children should leave first. Just leave it to the adults. Takagi Soichiro nodded and said in approval. Hee, Lord Gaocheng, you are underestimating us. Yazi suddenly smiled and said, although we are only high school students, we cannot underestimate our combat power. She quickly pulled out the long oak knife on her body and charged towards the dead body in front of her. As expected of the daughter of the Pashima family, Soichiro murmured and suddenly stopped her. Wait, here's something for you. Yako stopped, but saw Soichiro took out a Japanese samurai sword in his hand and handed it over. Kendo practitioners, just use it to fight. Yazi was stunned for a moment, then reached out to take it, held it in his hand, and hung his long oak knife back to his waist. With a slam, the long knife in his hand came out of its sheath. A terrifying energy flashed by. Good knife. Yazi only felt the preciousness of this knife just by waving it. This is a Murata sword. It is a Japanese sword made by Major General Murata at the Tokyo Artillery Factory during the Meiji period. It is very sharp. As a kendo celebrity, I believe it will exert its greatest power in your hands. Soichiro said. Yazi nodded gratefully, and a flash of excitement flashed in his eyes. What a nice look. Then let's fight. Soichiro also waved his sword and charged towards the dead bodies in front of him. Yazi smiled excitedly, held the knife in both hands, and rushed into the crowd of dead bodies with a stride. The next moment I saw a circular arc of sword light flashing, and all the dead bodies beside her were broken into 2 pieces. The Yako on this side got new weapons to fight, and the girls in the back also took out their weapons, and together with Soichiro's subordinates, launched a frantic shooting at the dead bodies. Yuriko was startled when she saw her daughter, who couldn't use a gun at all, was fighting with a pistol, and hurried to her daughter's side. Saya, who taught you how to use a gun? Shay raised his head. Mom, don't you know how to use a gun? Yuriko was taken aback for a moment. When I was a Wall Street trader, I used to carry a gun with me. When it comes to marksmanship, your father is not as good as me. Yuriko said. This is not important, come back to my question. Saya shot a dead body in front of him in the chest, raised his head and smiled. Naruto taught me. And I will use it soon. Really, I didn't expect your daughter to be so powerful, Yuriko said with a gratified smile. Mom, you always underestimate me, this time I will never let you underestimate me. Shay shouted. However, just when she was about to rush up to continue shooting, Yuriko pushed her back. It's really a strong child, how can parents put their children in danger? Saya, retreat quickly. No, I'm not retreating, Saya cried. However, at this moment, there were more and more dead bodies at the entrance of the courtyard. Although everyone's firepower was still fierce, it was impossible to stop the endless stream of dead bodies from entering. Yako slashed a dead body with one knife, and hurriedly retreated to the front of the girls, gasped slightly and said, Is Naruto still back? Yeah, there are more and more dead bodies. We can't stop it, Mommy said. Miyamoto Rei and Kiriko also retreated to the side of Yazi, panting and shouting, For the time being, we can only retreat. But, Naruto hasn't arrived yet, we have to persevere. Yazi narrowed his eyes slightly, and a determination rose from his face. We can't be defeated so easily before he comes back. Chapter 514 Get Back in Time. At this time, Naruto, who was in Paris, France, was rushing out of the zombie group with his back behind his back, and his figure kept jumping forward on the top of the high-rise buildings. Lie down behind him in an instant, feeling the feeling of the cool breeze blowing on her body at night, and suddenly she felt at ease. After a long period of shock and disbelief, she finally understood that what was in front of her was indeed Naruto, and I hugged him more realistically, lying on his back. This warm and quiet feeling is not a dream at all. Although the surroundings were dark, but with Naruto around, the fear and anxiety that he had before no longer felt in his heart in an instant. Naruto, all of this seems like a dream. Suddenly, he whispered softly. Naruto nodded. Yeah, such a dream is too cruel for humans. I really hope this nightmare can wake up soon. Naruto was silent for a while, and then he said softly, Don't worry, from now on, I will protect you. No matter how the world becomes, you have to believe that as long as we are still alive, there will be hope. Hearing this, his body trembled slightly, looking at Naruto and murmured, Naruto, is what you said true? Is there really hope in this world? I only know that one thing will never happen for no reason. Everything has its root. As long as the root is found, it can be solved. Naruto turned back and smiled. I will use my own ability to find out the root of it all. Looking at the confident smile on his face, she couldn't help but stay for a moment. At this moment, she seemed to see a hopeful tomorrow. Okay, let's find your parents now. Naruto accelerated slightly and sprinted towards the darkness ahead. Yeah, Mo nodded. In an apartment, Naruto took Moment into the corridor. In the corridor, bursts of blood rushed to her face, and the moment she got off Naruto, she took his arm and walked in the dark corridor. The smell of blood made her frown, and New China became more and more uneasy. The community here is already powered off in a large area, so at this time there is no lighting at all. Feeling the cold little hand, Naruto stretched out his other hand, chakra worked, and a faint flame on the fingertips quietly jumped. Looking at the flames on Naruto's fingertips in surprise, Naruto smiled faintly. Just use this for lighting. She nodded. With such a miraculous Naruto by her side, what was there to be afraid of? In front, at the end of the corridor, is the room where my parents are. As soon as I arrived at the door, I saw the door opened and the scene inside was extremely messy. In a moment of panic, Naruto sighed secretly and walked in first. With the brightness of the flames on his fingertips, he followed Naruto in an instant and could see the scene inside clearly. I saw a middle-aged couple standing in the hall, standing opposite each other, with their waists slightly on their backs, as if they were discussing something with each other, but they just stood there without any movement, appearing dead. A flash of surprise suddenly flashed in his eyes, and he hurriedly shouted, "Mom and Dad." The voice came out, and the two figures were slightly shocked and turned around. At this moment, just as he was about to rush up, he found that the palm of his hand was tightly held by a big hand. In an instant, Naruto called her and shook his head slowly at her. Instantly, his expression suddenly shook. When she looked at her parents in front of her again, she saw pale skin and eyes on those two familiar faces. This instantly looked at the two of them in disbelief, and stood still. Naruto sighed slightly. They have all turned into dead bodies. How can this happen? How can this happen? How can this happen? Instantly shouted in disbelief, his face full of tears. Naruto stretched out his hand to wrap her waist and pulled her into his arms. Instantly leaned against his arms gently, his shoulders kept shaking, but there was no cry. Her parents have also become cannibalistic dead bodies. Although, she had thought of all this, but when the bloody facts were placed in front of her, it was inevitable that she felt incomparable despair and helplessness in her heart. What are you going to do? Feeling the sadness of the moment, Naruto also felt pity in his heart. Destroying the dead body was just a matter of raising his hands, but the other party was the parents of the moment. Raised her head slowly in an instant, her beautiful eyes were slightly swollen, and her face was covered with tears. She looked back at the two figures rushing towards her, bit Kiba slightly, and said softly, "Ning Man, please help me free my parents." Naruto nodded, silently stretched out his hand and pointed his finger out. Chi-chi. Two blood arrows flew out from the heads of Shanna's parents, and Naruto turned back directly with Shanna and left the house. On the roof, she stood beside Naruto and looked into the distance. The night wind blew across her face, drying her tears. The grief of losing her parents kept her from saying a word for a long time. Naruto put his arms around her shoulders and gently pulled into his arms, giving her silent comfort. At this moment, the surroundings were silent, and it seemed that there were only two people who were relying on them. In Naruto's warm arms, there was a hint of comfort in his sad heart. Suddenly, Naruto frowned involuntarily. The next moment, he hurriedly said to the instant, "There is a situation in Japan, I will take you back." She was stunned for a moment, and she who was still in grief didn't have time to react, and suddenly felt a sway in front of her. After a moment, the scene changed, there was a wailing scream, and a large wave of dead bodies appeared in front of him. All of this, before she could regain her senses, a few whispers were heard beside Naruto. "Naruto. You're finally back. Excellent. Rei, Mommy, Kotoba, Otome, Sakai, Kiriko, Guishin, and Alice were all standing in a corner, forced into a desperate situation, and most of the weapons in their hands were out of ammunition. Not far in front, Yuko was fighting with a long sword. Saya and Yuriko were also surrounded by dead bodies. Almost everyone around them was unable to protect themselves. At this time, the appearance of Naruto brings a new hope to everyone. Seeing Naruto from a distance, Yako finally breathed a sigh of relief, and her fighting spirit became high again. Naruto, you can make us wait. Chapter 515 Bitten. Sorry, I'm late. Naruto noticed the situation around him, and it was really urgent. If he hadn't set spatial coordinates on Mommy and the others and sensed the danger here, the result might not have been at all. I can't come over. I didn't expect such a big thing to happen here when I went to Paris to save the moment. Seeing that the girls were looking at him, Naruto handed over the moment around him to the world, and then rushed into the group of dead bodies as soon as he moved. It was okay to see the world of friends in an instant, and he was holding a gun in his hand. He couldn't help but be startled. Sana, how did Naruto bring you here? Aren't you in Paris? The world shouted in surprise and joy. I was going to die, but Naruto suddenly appeared and saved me. Momo said with a glance at Naruto who had already rushed out. Teleportation. This must be Naruto's ability to teleport. All the girls exclaimed. Great. In an instant, we are all together now. World laughed. Naruto's sudden intrusion was as if a monstrous wave was created out of thin air. The dead bodies were completely unable to stop Naruto's footsteps. Often, Naruto could directly blast several dead bodies with one punch, with a dagger in his hand. Swipe, and several broken bodies are thrown out. Seeing such a situation, Yazi also had a lot of fighting spirit, and the Murata treasured sword in her hand became more and more handy. Naruto quickly came to Yuko's side. Seeing that there were too many dead bodies around her, he directly helped her to kill a group to relieve the pressure, and then rushed towards Saya and Yuriko, who were surrounded by the center. At this time, Saya's mother and daughter were about to run out of ammunition, and the situation had fallen into a very critical moment. Hundreds of dead bodies had gathered around them, screaming and rushing towards them. Mom, there are too many dead bodies. Saya shot at them, back to back, she cried anxiously. At this time, Naruto had already jumped towards the two of them, and Yuriko smiled faintly. It's alright, Naruto is here. Huh. As soon as Shay turned his head, he saw Naruto's figure descend from the sky and landed beside the two of them. Too slow, Shay yelled at him. Naruto smiled slightly, took the hands of the two women, and said, hurry up and retreat, leave it to me here. After he finished speaking, before they could react, he lightly hugged the slender waists of the two of them, jumped up, and quickly jumped into the sky. The two women let out a soft cry, and the next moment, the three of them had already returned to Mommy and the others. Shizuka, hurry up and get in the car and leave here, I'll block it for a while. Naruto called to them. Yes, the girls responded in unison, and Naruto's words were now equivalent to an order. However, we're running out of ammunition now, I'm afraid we can't rush out. Mommy said with a frown. Naruto smiled slightly. It's okay, I will protect you in the past. Just when the girls were puzzled, Naruto folded his hands slightly to hand seal. Shadow clone technique. He snorted softly, and used this ninjutsu skill. The technique of shadow clone uses its own chakra to create a clone with the strength of the main body. This clone will disappear after being attacked. However, this clone also inherits all the abilities of Naruto, but the strength is similar to that of Naruto. Naruto's body is divided equally. With avatars escorting them, they will never be in danger again. Boom. An instant, after the shadow clone technique was used, another Naruto appeared beside everyone. Why is there another Naruto? This is a clone technique and one of my abilities. Well, don't be surprised, he will protect you, Naruto said to them. At this time, Yako, Soichiro and the others who were fighting not far away seemed to be overwhelmed, and Naruto didn't say any more, and rushed towards Yako. Let's go. Naruto's clone waved his hand and rushed towards the back of the manor with the girls. At this time, the army of dead bodies has grown more and more, and almost everyone has been blocked. Only Naruto and his clone are still safe in this area, and even Yako and Soichiro, who are highly skilled in kendo, are forced to falling back. Naruto appeared next to Yako with a flash, and after helping her blast away several dead bodies, he said, Sister Yako, there are too many dead bodies, you should retreat first. Yako glanced at Naruto, shook his head lightly and said, this can't be done, everyone is still fighting. Naruto frowned slightly, just leave it to me here, I'm afraid you'll get hurt if you stay any longer. Yazi looked up at him, and when she saw the unwavering gaze in his eyes, she couldn't help but tremble slightly. She suddenly smiled and said, okay. I'll listen to you. Okay. Naruto also had a smile on his face. I have already opened the way for you. I think you should be fine by yourself, hurry up and fight with Shizuka and the others. The boy nodded and turned to leave. In such a situation, although she really wanted to fight, she finally listened to Naruto. Naruto looked at the arena, and groups of dead bodies were dancing in the square. At this time, Soichiro Takagi, unable to resist, also leaned towards Naruto. Hurry up and take your subordinates to retreat, I can buy you some time by myself. Naruto said to him when he saw Soichiro also rushing over. Soichiro laughed, but saw the long sword in his hand and shouted, we have no way out. After being silent for a while, he stretched out his foot and said to Naruto, look, I've been infected too. Naruto couldn't help being startled, looked down at his feet, and saw that the shoes on his feet had been bitten through a large hole, and there were faint bloodstains inside. Naruto was stunned, but he didn't expect that Soichiro's feet were actually bitten by a dead body. Although it was only a small bite, it only bit through a layer of flesh, but as long as someone bitten by a dead body, they will definitely become a dead body within 30 minutes. Haha, it's not a waste of life to be able to kill so happily. Soichiro laughed, waved his long sword and charged at the dead bodies again and killed them. Chapter 516 Strong Man, Kill Me. Watching Soichiro's tragic rush to kill, Naruto also secretly admired him. Although he was just an ordinary person, he was so unafraid of death at a critical moment, and he even had to fight until the very end. I'm already infected. Everyone else retreat. At this time, Soichiro ordered his subordinates to flee backwards while dashing. The subordinates couldn't help but stunned when they heard the words. However, those subordinates did not listen to his orders at all, and began to fight the dead body even more desperately. Seeing this scene, Naruto couldn't help shaking his head and sighing slightly. Soichiro has been infected by the dead body, and these subordinates already know, but they still intend to fight with their superiors to the last moment. Naruto hand seal with both hands, and then slammed on the ground, instantly. There was only a loud bang in front of the collapsed far door, and a 1-meter-wide wall rose out of thin air, rising 10 meters before stopping, as if it was a scourge to intercept the dead bodies that were still pouring in from the courtyard outer. Doden, Earth Style, Earth Wall Art. After that, the seal in his hand kept going, and he continued to hand seal again. This time, it was a futon, wind style, seal. Futon, wind style, wind blade. In an instant, a huge wind blade formed by a strong wind appeared in the air, and a violent gust of wind was generated around it. Everyone watched this magical scene and stood there for a while. At this moment, the huge wind blade in midair suddenly moved, as if it was a huge guillotine knife, and the wind blade slammed down towards the dead body on the ground. Chi-chi. The tearing power carried by the wind blade instantly smashed the dead into minced flesh, and the blood was scattered and sprayed with the gust of wind. After that, the wind blade did not disappear, but under the control of Naruto, after turning a circle in midair, it once again cut across the group of dead bodies. The dead bodies were just screaming on the ground, and they had no room to dodge at all. The huge wind blade with a width of 7 or 8 meters rolled up a gust of wind and cut off the dead bodies in an instant. A large piece of corpse was brought up, and with just this one blow, dozens of dead bodies were wiped out. After the wind blade cut through the dead body, it stopped in midair. Naruto held the seal in one hand while controlling it. Since he got this special chakra in his body, his control has become stronger. If it was placed in the past, such a wind blade would not be able to control the energy of him at all, but this time he has been able to control it in a small area. The short-term control is enough to show that his control has been further strengthened. And everyone looked at the wind blade that seemed to be dyed with a layer of blood and whirled in the air, and looked at Naruto's back, and couldn't help but feel a sense of awe in their hearts. In the eyes of ordinary people, the extremely terrifying dead body was slaughtered like garbage under his hands. This ability has far exceeded the deterrent effect brought by thermal weapons. If Naruto said he was a god now, they would believe it. The next moment, Naruto controlled the wind blade and quickly circled back and forth twice in the field. Wherever he passed, almost no dead body could stand, and almost all became two halves. On the square, blood flowed into rivers, such a massacre. Even Naruto was a little nauseated. Finally, he stopped killing and stood quietly in the square. In the surroundings, except for the living Soichiro's subordinates, and Soichiro who was panting violently, there were no dead bodies. They looked at Naruto's back, and a trace of fear flashed in their eyes. Nearly 1,000 dead bodies in the square fell to the ground as he swayed back and forth and the invisible wind blade rolled over. It only took 10 minutes. Killing more than 1,000 people in 10 minutes in a row, is this still a human? If it weren't for the fact that Naruto killed all infected dead bodies, everyone really wanted to give him the title of Hell Shura. But despite this, everyone's eyes on Naruto have changed, and they have become fearful. This is the deep fear of the strong from the heart. Naruto didn't know what he had done, and the shock to everyone was too great. Even Soichiro was deeply shocked. He looked at Naruto's figure for a long time, and suddenly coughed out a mouthful of blood. Only then did the surviving subordinates rush to Soichiro's side. Lord Soichiro, the subordinates tried to support him, but Soichiro quickly pushed them away. Don't come here. I have been infected and will soon become a dead body. Now I have something to tell you. Master Soichiro. Now the whole world is full of such dead bodies, and people are all in panic and despair, but the country and the army are also trying to maintain order, and now a survivor base has been established in the military district away from Tokyo, and you will be next. Go there. His subordinates could not help but burst into tears after hearing this. Soichiro stopped looking at them, his brows furrowed sharply, and a cold sweat broke out on his face. He endured the pain of crazy mutation after his body was infected, and walked to Naruto and said, "Stronger, please agree at last. I have 2 requests." Naruto looked at him and nodded. Go ahead. Help me take care of Yuriko and Saya, they will be handed over to you for protection in the future. Well, I will protect them. Naruto responded. A rare smile appeared on Soichiro's face. Then, thank you very much. He bowed to Naruto, raised his head and said, then the second request now is to kill me. Naruto sighed slightly. Soichiro looked at him and said, you strong man, you should understand my thoughts. The subordinates looked at the two in silence. Naruto raised his hand to Soichiro. Fingers stretched out slowly. Soichiro closed his eyes, and there was a hint of relief on his resolute face. Puff. With a light sound, Soichiro's body shook violently, and then, his tall body fell to the ground with a bang. Master Soichiro, the surviving subordinates cried out in grief. A small hole that seemed to have been penetrated by a bullet appeared on Soichiro's forehead. This was the effect of Naruto's concentration of the highly compressed wind blade power on his fingertips, and then instantly launching it forward. After killing Soichiro with his own hands, Naruto sighed slightly. Now that's all right. I have to explain it to Saya and Yuriko again. I hope they can understand. Let's all withdraw. Naruto waved his hand and led the crowd away from the square, towards the back of the manor. Chapter 517 Wisteria Caught. At this time, under the protection of Naruto's shadow clone, Shizuka had successfully driven the RV out, and after everyone got in the car, she drove along the road leading to the back door. At this moment, at the back door, Koichi Wisteria's bus stopped there, surrounded by scattered dead bodies, heading towards where he was. From the back door, he saw Shizuka's RV approaching from a distance, and a shadow flashed in his eyes. Damn, did this let them escape? Damn. Glancing at the scattered dead bodies on the surrounding roads, a mad look flashed across his face. Fight. He suddenly pushed the classmate who was driving away, sat in the driving car, and said, "Now I will stage the craziest revenge in history for everyone. We have to let them know that we are by no means easy to bully." He honked the car's horn, and the honking of the horn suddenly sounded high. The dead bodies that were still moving slowly around them all sensed the existence of the bus and rushed towards the bus. "Hey, these guys really only rely on hearing to act." Wisteria smiled coldly, stepped on the accelerator, and quickly turned on the road under the fearful eyes of the classmates beside her. At the same time, his car horn was constantly blaring wildly. As soon as Shizuka's car exited the back door, she saw a group of dead bodies behind Wisteria's two big buses. At this moment, Wisteria's bus suddenly rushed towards the RV where Shizuka was, and also brought the group of dead bodies behind them. In this case, Shizuka and the others in the car couldn't help but turn pale. "Isn't that bastard Wisteria? Damn it, what is this guy doing?" Lee couldn't help scolding. Yazi held the knife in his hand, and his eyes flashed coldly. "Lee, I really shouldn't have let him go at that time. Damn, this guy is absolutely insane. No, we have to get out of the car and destroy these dead bodies, or we won't be able to deal with it after more and more. We don't want to be trapped with this kind of scum." At this time, the Wisteria in the bus stuck his head out of the window and laughed at the RV passing by. "You all deserve to die. Wait to die, ha ha ha." The dead bodies rushed towards his bus frantically, and many dead bodies along the way also noticed the voice of the people in the car next to Shizuka, and suddenly rushed towards the RV. "Damn it," Rei cursed, and jumped out of the car with the rifle on her body. "Hey, Rei." Kiriko just wanted to stop her daughter's impulse, but it was too late. She called out to her, and quickly got out of the car with a spear. Yazi jumped up and got out of the car holding the Murata sword. As a result, everyone in the car, except for Alice who was too young, and Wei Shin, who was incompetent, jumped out of the car with weapons. At this moment, Naruto also brought the rest of the survivors to the back door. Seeing Naruto's arrival, all the girls couldn't help but rejoice. "Naruto, I didn't expect you to be here so soon," the girls exclaimed with joy. "What's going on?" Naruto saw at a glance the bus with the Wisteria in front of him, and the way the girls got off the bus and prepared to meet the dead body. Without waiting for the girls to answer, he dismissed Shadow Clone, and all the information he saw and heard in his clone came into his mind. He understood in an instant that when Shizuka and the others first came to the back door, Wisteria suddenly went crazy and attracted a group of dead bodies to block their way. "Very good, really good." Naruto suddenly sneered, and the next moment, he flipped his hands again and again, and a string of seals was formed in an instant. Time and space enchantment. With a soft drink, a transparent light curtain suddenly rose from all directions on the surrounding ground, including the girls and all the survivors. "Don't walk out of these walls of light. I'll come as soon as I go." Naruto's voice just fell, and in the puzzled look of everyone, his figure quickly jumped out of the barrier, jumped high, and suddenly appeared in the sky above the Wisteria bus. At this time, Zidane was still laughing in the car, and he smiled proudly to the students who came with him in the car. "Look, this is their fate, these people who dare to despise us and bully us. Guy, you will be surrounded by the dead. Ha ha ha." The classmates in the car didn't know whether it was because they had seen a lot of things like this along the way, or because they were brought into the madness by the Wisteria. In short, the expressions on their faces were also full of pervert-esque distortions. "He he he, as long as you follow me, everyone will no longer be bullied by others. Whoever dares to target us, we will punish them." Wisteria opened his arms and laughed. The classmates next to him hurriedly helped him hold the steering wheel. Just when he was intoxicated with the thrill of revenge, there was a sudden muffled sound from the roof of the bus, and the iron sheet on the roof sank directly. Wisteria and all the students couldn't help but be taken aback. At this moment, the ground in front suddenly shook, and then, in the stunned eyes of Wisteria and the classmates in the car, a tall earth wall suddenly rose. Stop in front of their car out of thin air. "Purple, Mr. Wisteria, What's going on? Quickly brake. Shitohiro turned pale in shock, and hurried over to step on the brakes. However, just as he stepped on the brakes, the front of the bus slammed into the dirt wall with a savage thud. What? There were screams and screams in the car. Fortunately, the car was not driving very fast, and the students sitting in the back were not hurt too much, but Wisteria in the driver's seat and another classmate next to him directly collided with each other. On the steering wheel, slammed, and fell there. At this time, everyone in the barrier heard the sound of the crash coming from afar, and the appearance of the bus hitting the suddenly rising earth wall. When the dead bodies rushed to the front and back of the knot, as if they were separated by a layer of solid glass, they couldn't break it at all, and they could only keep hitting outside, and they felt a miracle in their hearts. At this time, Naruto, who was standing on the roof of the bus, used ninjutsu to stop the bus and jumped into the bus. Under the terrified eyes of many students, he reached out and raised the wisteria that was mixed on the steering wheel. Holding him like a chicken, the figure flashed back to the enchantment. Chapter 518 Wisteria. All the girls couldn't help but look at the wisteria who fell to the ground and woke up after being thrown, and they all showed anger. You scumbag! Miyamoto Ray kicked him directly in the chest. What? Wisteria cried out in pain, and was kicked and rolled forward a few times. She raised her head and stared at Miyamoto Ray, Naruto and the others with anger and unwillingness. When he saw the transparent barrier around him, his eyes were full of surprise. Naruto was expressionless, stepped forward and said lightly, I really underestimated you before. I didn't expect you to do these things. Did you plan it before? Wisteria looked at Naruto and said, It's in your hands this time, I'm a loser. But you won't be better off. How long can you live in this world full of zombies? Ha 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 ha. After speaking, he lay on the ground and raised his head, laughing wildly. Naruto sneered disdainfully, You don't need to care if we die or not, I really want to kill you at this time. Do you know what I hate the most? It's a villain like you who takes advantage of others' dangers. Quote. Humph. Then kill me. You won't survive well anyway. The surroundings are surrounded by zombies. You can't get out. Ha ha ha. Wisteria cried. Seeing his crazy look like the fish died and the net was broken, a murderous look flashed in the eyes of Yazi who was standing by the side. She suddenly walked up slowly raised the Murata sword in her hand, looked at the wisteria lying on the ground and sneered softly, Do you think we'll let you die happily? It's not that easy. Naruto looked at her, only to see Yazi carrying the long knife to the side of the wisteria. A bloodthirsty smile flashed on the corner of his mouth. He glanced at Naruto slightly, and the long knife in his hand stabbed with a bang. What? Wisteria let out a miserable cry, and saw that the tip of Yazi's knife just pierced into the flesh of one of Wisteria's thighs, piercing deeply, and Yin Yuhi's blood slowly came out. However, this knife stabbed just right. When she pulled it out with a bang, the blood on Wisteria's leg did not spurt out. The knife avoided the aorta and veins. Wisteria already understood Yazi's intention and looked at her with fear. Kill me quickly. Yako smiled slightly, then turned to look at Naruto and the girls. I see that everyone disagrees. It seems that you scum deserves such a punishment. Before she finished speaking, she stabbed Wisteria's other thigh with a knife again. Wisteria screamed again, and cold sweat broke out on his face in an instant. As a teacher, he had never suffered such hardships before. Meaning, she is a devil. Miyamoto Ray stood aside with a look of relief. Kiriko frowned slightly, but didn't say anything, but the others felt that this was a bit too much, although it was cool to abuse people like this, but does it seem too cruel? Can't you just kill it with a single shot? Naruto looked at Yazi, although there was no expression on his face, but he was already frowning secretly in his heart. No, Yazi cannot be allowed to continue like this. He stood up, and just when Yazi was about to stab the wisteria for the third time, he reached out and grabbed her jade hand holding the long knife, looking at her. Yazi, it's all right. Wisteria looked at Naruto and exhaled slightly. Yazi was stunned for a moment, seeing Naruto looking at her with a serious face. she couldn't help feeling a little uncomfortable, nodded silently, and put the knife back. The girls let out a soft sigh. After all, the appearance of Yazzie stabbing someone with a knife just now was a bit scary. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone had been together for a few days and had become familiar with each other, they might have feared the child from now on. Yazzie does have some problems in this regard, Naruto thought to herself, but when she saw a dead child before, she couldn't bear to do it, which proved that she didn't really want to be so murderous and cruel in her heart, but occasionally I just can't control myself. It seems that she must find a time to help her solve this problem, otherwise in this oppressive world, she will have an accident sooner or later. At this time, all the girls turned their attention to Naruto, expecting him to deal with the scumbag Wisteria. After Naruto pulled the Yakuza away, he looked at Wisteria again, saw that he was staring at him, and said with a faint smile, "Although I won't torture you like her, I won't easily take advantage of you, so be conscious." Quote. "You, what are you going to do?" Wisteria exclaimed with a look of fear on her face. Naruto ignored his cry, but slowly extended his palm towards him. In the wide eyes of Wisteria, a tree stem as thick as an arm suddenly grew between Naruto's palms. It rolled directly towards the Wisteria's neck. "Ah, what kind of monster is this?" Wisteria was startled suddenly, and couldn't help but scream in fear. Naruto ignored him and just smiled faintly. This move is his Mokuden wood-style technique, which is a new escape technique produced by combining chakra with water and soil nature transformation. When used, it can summon or incarnate various wooden objects. Although Naruto doesn't have much chakra now, it's still very easy to use some small Mokuden wood style. "Wow, this is Brother Naruto's magic again," Alice exclaimed excitedly, looking at him with curiosity and admiration. "It should be," Shay nodded. Yuriko on the side was also full of curiosity. At this time, Naruto had already controlled the stem to wrap the Wisteria's neck, pulled it upwards, controlled the stem to hang him in the air, and looked at the dead body outside the enchantment, his face showing a smile. You. Wisteria is now in shock and fear. Naruto's tactics are completely beyond the scope of ordinary people's thinking. It is like making a movie, so it seems that the surrounding area, the magical light curtain, was also made by him. The large earth wall that appeared in front of the bus before is also his masterpiece. What does that mean? Means you are an idiot. Actually, against a Superman, it's useless to die. At this time, the Wisteria, with a face ashen, blood still dripping from his thigh, slowly dripped to the ground, and a bitter smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. "I'm really unhappy." Suddenly, he felt his body flying high up into the sky, and the tree stem left his neck, but his body had already volleyed out, and below, there was a group of dead bodies screaming. Chapter 519 Mutant Dead. Underneath, the dead body danced wildly. On the way to free fall, Wisteria was feeling the god of death approaching step by step. Finally, he slammed into the dead bodies, but they soon caught them all over his body. Immediately afterwards, the dead were bitten all over the body. Pain, all hit his mind at this moment. At this moment, the nerves seemed to be numb. The darkness gradually disappeared. Wisteria's unwillingness is still circling in his mind. Suddenly, light reappeared in front of his eyes. This is what happened. Wisteria suddenly found that his body was able to move, but at this time a crazy killing intent and bloodthirsty thoughts rushed into his mind. In an instant, the world in front of him changed color and became a bloody yuhi. Vaguely, he saw the live meat not far from the many dead bodies around him. After Naruto threw the Wisteria into the group of dead bodies, he clapped his hands, and said to the girls beside him, "This should be his best end, right?" All the women nodded when they heard the words. "Then, everyone, get in the car first. I'll clear the way for you after the barrier is lifted." Yeah, everyone was headed by Naruto, who nodded in unison as soon as he finished speaking, and entered the RV. Seeing everyone entering and Shizuka getting ready in the driver's seat, Naruto planned to unlock the spirit formation. Suddenly, he felt the entire barrier shake slightly, and his body couldn't help shaking. Naruto looked at the direction of the vibration in surprise, and his eyes suddenly became a little strange. I saw that outside the barrier in front, one of the dead bodies was punching punch after punch on his barrier. Boom! With every punch, the barrier would tremble slightly, as if it would burst at any time. And this dead body is actually Koichi Wisteria, who was just thrown into the dead body by himself. Unexpectedly, he was not eaten. Although his body was full of mutilations after being bitten, every punch he attacked was able to generate a powerful force. And at the same time, the rotten flesh that was bitten off on his body is also growing little by little, giving birth to new rotten flesh, making his body more complete and stronger. What's going on? At this time, the girls in the car had already seen the vibration of the entire barrier outside, and the huge slamming voice was constantly reaching their ears. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly, and he stretched out his hand to make a seal. Chakra released vigorously, and the barrier that was crumbling immediately stabilized. No matter how Wisteria waved his fist, he couldn't smash it. At this time, Naruto was already on Naruto in Wisteria's eyes. He didn't know if he was still conscious at this time, and he didn't know what thoughts he had now. At this time, he seemed to feel that he only had one instinct, the instinct of wanting to eat people and bloodthirsty. Naruto has become the most delicious live meat in his eyes. Although I don't know why this guy mutated into such a powerful dead body, but, you can't escape the fate of perishing. Naruto clenched his fists and shouted, "Everyone listen, get in the car first. Don't move, I'll deal with that guy." After he finished speaking, he condensed a Mokuden wood-style seal, and split out a Mokuden wood-style clone from his body. This is a clone that condenses half of his strength, and it will never disappear unless he is dealt a fatal blow. This clone, he used to protect the girls in the vehicle. Then, he stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers, and with a snap, one side of the square barrier suddenly disappeared. That is, the barrier where the Wisteria was located was opened. In an instant, all the dead bodies rushed towards the barrier, of course, including the Wisteria. Facing this group of dead bodies, Naruto stood on the spot and slowly hand-sealed with both hands. After a few seconds, the seal was finished, and the dead bodies rushed in front of Naruto. Naruto suddenly opened his mouth and took a deep breath. At the same time, a chakra in his body was running wildly, and then it suddenly sprayed out at the dead bodies in front. Futon, wind style, Datapa, great breakthrough. Quote. Boom boom boom. In an instant, an extremely strong wind spurted out of Naruto's mouth, and the wind was so strong that it directly blew a group of dead bodies backwards. Moreover, this move, Datapa, great breakthrough, has also been improved by Naruto, with countless sharp wind blades mixed in the gust of wind. These wind blades can instantly pierce through golden cracks. With just this blow, the dead bodies that rushed forward were all cut into pieces by the wind blade in the gust of wind, and turned into a blood dance and rolled back toward the back. It was the first time that Yuriko saw such a powerful Naruto, and she killed most of the dead bodies in an instant. Is he still human? And the survivors who rushed out with Naruto before were obviously stunned by this series of sights. Everyone was dumbfounded and unable to think. Turn it into pieces. Naruto was expressionless. At this moment, he seemed to be a god who punished life and death. Too handsome. Naruto brother. Guishin's excited face Yuhi's heart beat, almost jumping up in the car. At this moment, Naruto suddenly saw that there was a complete dead body among the fragments of the dead body that had been rolled back. This dead body is Koichi Wisteria. I didn't expect him to be so powerful after turning into a dead body and mutating. Not only can he shake his enchantment, but he can also resist attacking ninjutsu. The next moment, he took out the dagger and quickly threw it towards the Wisteria Hiroichi who was in midair. The dagger turned into a stream of light and instantly appeared in front of Koichi Wisteria. Just when Naruto thought that the other party was going to be shot directly in the forehead by him, he saw that he suddenly raised his arm, and the dagger slammed into his palm. However, the dagger shot out with Naruto's strength was unable to penetrate his palm and shoot through his head, which surprised him greatly. It seems that this guy is stronger than the ordinary dead body after mutation, and the defense is higher. Thinking like this, a stern look flashed in Naruto's eyes, and the next moment his figure turned into a golden light and disappeared instantly, and suddenly appeared in front of Wisteria Koichi. Rasengan. A rapidly spinning blue energy ball condensed in his hand, and the powerful energy directly brought a whirlwind, and his hand slammed down towards Wisteria's chest. It's that trick. Yuriko couldn't help but exclaimed. She saw the energy ball in Naruto's hands from a distance, which was the ability he demonstrated to herself back then. Is it finally time to truly witness the power at this moment? Boom. A loud noise, Naruto's Rasengan slammed into Wisteria's chest. Chapter 524 A Way to Survive. The powerful and unparalleled spiral energy burst out almost instantly. From a palm-sized energy ball, a violent shock wave spread out, and the mutated Wisteria was blasted away. Wisteria's body swirled violently in midair and flew out, rolling back like a gust of wind. A loud bang. Wisteria's body fell heavily to the ground was slammed into depression, and a wave of air swept around the ground, and the dead bodies on this side were pushed out by the wave. A gleam of light flashed in Naruto's azure blue eyes, and he murmured slightly, "It's so hard. The power of this mutant dead body is so strong." However, the girls in the car were stunned by Naruto's stunt, flashed in an instant, and made such a powerful attack in an instant, a big hole was blasted out of the ground. Is this a bomb? Or missiles? Can man really have such power? Naruto, who is he? All of this made the girls feel that Naruto was shrouded in a mysterious halo that could not be revealed. Looking at his back, they were all deeply shocked. At this moment, in the big pit that was blasted out, a figure suddenly flew out and flashed towards Naruto at a streamer-like speed. The girls almost didn't see each other's body clearly, they only saw a black line rushing towards Naruto. So fast. Yazi was also shocked, and she couldn't see the opponent's movements clearly with her eyesight. Is the power of the mutant dead body really so powerful? Be careful, Naruto. Thinking of this, Yako couldn't help shouting at Naruto. Naruto's eyes flashed again, and the corner of his mouth pulled a slight arc. Although the speed of the dead body is very fast, in his eyes, it is only the sprinting speed of an ordinary ninja. Compared with his own speed, it is simply as slow as a turtle crawling. Wisteria's eyes are now full of faint green light, and the muscles on his body are no longer shrunken and gray, but full of feeling, full of strength. He could still see Naruto, but only killing was on his mind. One punch to Naruto. The generated fist wind made a hunting sound. Naruto kicked his feet, and his body flew towards him, and the dagger in his hand stabbed the opponent's neck fiercely. At the moment when the two crossed, Naruto's body suddenly flickered slightly, and flashed past Wisteria's fist at a speed so fast that an afterimage was formed. At the same time, on the dagger in his hand, suddenly a sharp wind blade appeared, tightly attached to the dagger. Kai. The next moment, Naruto's body and dagger seemed to turn into a streamer, flashing from the Wisteria's neck. His figure suddenly appeared behind Wisteria. Hiraishin, / Naruto slowly turned around and saw that Wisteria's body was still rushing forward and slammed into the barrier behind him with a bang. Immediately afterwards, his head was suddenly thrown away from the body, flying high for a long distance, and then rolled to the ground. His body also fell down in response. Yin Yuhi's blood spurted wildly from his neck, dying Yuhi's enchantment. Naruto swung the dagger slightly, splattered the dirty blood on it, hooked the corner of his mouth, and put it back on his body. This Hiraishin / is a physical technique different from Hiraishin's technique. It instantly explodes the power of chakra in the body to achieve an effect almost equivalent to short-distance teleportation, but wherever it goes, it will all be caught in Naruto's hands. The dagger with the blessing of the wind blade is cut off. This is unparalleled speed. The Wisteria, which turned into a mutant dead body, had not lost its vitality at the moment when the head landed, and was still struggling and twitching slightly. Naruto stopped looking at it, and set his eyes on the front group of dead bodies. At this time, Naruto suddenly moved, and the next moment he was already standing on the roof of the RV. She called out to Shizuka, who was slightly dazed in the car, "Hurry up and drive forward." "Ah, yes," Shizuka hurriedly responded, stepping on the accelerator hard, and although a group of dead bodies were rushing up in front of her, she did not hesitate in her heart at the moment. Because of her trust in Naruto, she would absolutely I won't doubt Naruto's words because of this. Naruto stood on the roof of the car, and the RV under his feet galloped away from the group of dead bodies in front of him. His hands began to slowly hand seal. Take a deep breath, the chakra in the body works like crazy. The next moment, his last handprint is finished. Doden, Earth Style, Earth Shatter. He let out a deep drink, accompanied by a powerful chakra rushing out from his body, and the ground in front suddenly split to both sides at an alarming speed. A deep gully is exposed, and the ground in this gully is as smooth as a mirror surface, which does not affect the passage of the RV at all. And it has a depth of more than 10 meters. At the same time, the two cracked earths also led the dead bodies to the sides, and the car took advantage of the sunken passage in the middle to drive forward at full speed. Above the car, the dead were standing on both sides of the cracked earth, screaming, looking at the car that was galloping down below, but there was nothing to do. There were also some dead bodies that rushed towards the RV below desperately, but when they fell to the ground, they could only turn into a pile of rotten meat and be thrown behind the RV. The girls in the RV looked nervously from the window to the canyon-like passage that had been opened out, as well as the dead bodies on both sides, and their hearts could not help but tighten. Fortunately, Naruto had been standing on the roof of the car, guarding against the danger of some dead bodies falling on the car. It is worth mentioning that when Naruto opened up an avenue, the survivors of Gao Cheng's subordinates also drove their own cars towards the RV that followed Naruto. In the end, they all followed through the many dangers without any danger. When the crowd finally drove out of this busy area where dead bodies spread, the car stopped on the road heading for the suburbs. Everyone got out of the car and took a deep breath. It's really dangerous. We escaped from such a dangerous situation. Shizuka wiped the sweat from her forehead because she was nervous.